There are stories that speak of kings, empires, and legendary battles. Then there are stories that quietly reshape the human heart across thousands of years. Imagine a young boy blessed with extraordinary beauty and an even more extraordinary gift. Before he could understand the meaning of destiny, he saw a vision unlike anything ever witnessed by a child. That single dream ignited jealousy within his own home, led to betrayal by his own brothers, carried him across deserts as a slave, placed him inside the prison of a foreign kingdom, and finally elevated him to become one of the greatest leaders in ancient history. Every step appeared to be a disaster, yet every disaster concealed a divine plan. His life became a timeless lesson proving that faith can survive betrayal, purity can overcome temptation, patience can defeat injustice, and forgiveness can heal wounds that seem impossible to mend. This is not merely the story of a prophet. It is one of history's greatest narratives of hope, resilience, and the mysterious wisdom of Allah. Welcome to Sleepless Historian Salavora, where history comes alive through the lives of remarkable people whose stories continue to inspire humanity. Today we journey deep into the ancient lands of Canaan and Egypt to witness the complete life of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him. His story stands unique among all prophetic narratives because the Holy Quran presents it as one continuous masterpiece. Allah himself describes it as Ahsan al-Qasas, the finest and most beautiful of stories. Every event unfolds with purpose. Every hardship becomes a step toward honor. Every tear eventually becomes a source of joy. For believers, historians, and students of civilization alike, the life of Yusuf offers a profound window into the spiritual, political, and cultural world of the ancient Near East. Long before Yusuf was born, Allah had already prepared the foundation of his remarkable destiny through generations of righteous prophets. His family belonged to one of the noblest lineages ever known. His father was the great prophet Yaqub, peace be upon him, known in biblical tradition as Jacob. Yaqub himself was the son of Prophet Ishaq, Isaac, peace be upon him, and Ishaq was the son of the beloved friend of Allah, Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. Few families in history carried such an extraordinary chain of revelation. Within a single household lived the descendants of prophets whose names would echo across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam for thousands of years. The family belonged to the children of Israel. The title, Israel, was the honored name given to Prophet Yaqub. Therefore, every descendant of Yaqub became known as Banu Israel, the children of Israel. At this point in history, however, they were not yet the great nation remembered in later centuries. They were still a relatively small pastoral family living among the hills and valleys of Canaan. They traveled with flocks of sheep, goats, and camels. Their wealth consisted not of towering palaces or glittering cities but of livestock, fertile grazing lands, wells, and strong family connections. Ancient Canaan occupied one of the most important crossroads in the world. Powerful civilizations surrounded it. To the southwest lay mighty Egypt, whose pharaohs ruled one of humanity's oldest kingdoms along the fertile Nile River. To the northeast stretched Mesopotamia, home to advanced cities, writing systems, and influential kingdoms. Merchant caravans constantly crossed the deserts carrying spices, perfumes, textiles, precious metals, grain, and exotic goods. Canaan itself became a meeting place of cultures, languages, religions, and commerce. Although Yaqub's family lived modestly, they stood at the center of a region whose political importance reached far beyond their own tents. According to Islamic tradition, Yaqub devoted his entire life to worshipping Allah and guiding his children toward righteousness. He possessed deep wisdom, immense patience, and extraordinary spiritual insight inherited from his father Ishaq and grandfather Ibrahim. Yet despite his prophetic knowledge, Yaqub still experienced the emotional challenges familiar to every loving parent. Among his many sons, one child possessed qualities unlike any other. That child was Yusuf. From his earliest years, Yusuf displayed remarkable intelligence, gentleness, honesty, and humility. His face radiated unusual beauty that caught the attention of everyone around him. Authentic hadith literature describes Prophet Yusuf as having received half of all worldly beauty. This expression does not necessarily imply a mathematical division but rather emphasizes that Allah granted him an appearance of breathtaking elegance unmatched by ordinary human standards. Later generations would remember his beauty not merely because of physical appearance but because it reflected the purity of his character and the nobility of his soul. His younger brother, Benjamin, shared the same mother. According to historical reports preserved by early Muslim historians and supported by biblical tradition, their mother was Rachel, one of Yaqub's beloved wives. Rachel passed away while Benjamin was still very young. Her death left an emptiness within the household. As a result, Yaqub naturally devoted greater affection toward the two youngest boys who had lost their mother so early in life. His kindness arose from compassion rather than favoritism, yet human emotions often misunderstand intentions. The older brothers gradually noticed the special tenderness their father showed toward Yusuf and Benjamin. Instead of recognizing the painful circumstances surrounding their younger brothers, jealousy quietly entered their hearts. Jealousy rarely appears suddenly. It grows slowly through repeated comparisons, wounded pride, and whispered suspicions. Day after day, small feelings hardened into dangerous resentment. The Quran carefully portrays this emotional reality with remarkable psychological depth. Rather than presenting the brothers as monsters from the beginning, it reveals how ordinary human weaknesses can evolve into devastating actions when left unchecked. This timeless lesson continues to resonate across every generation. Families divided by envy often suffer deeper wounds than those caused by strangers. Despite the tension developing among the brothers, Yusuf himself remained innocent. He spent his childhood under the loving guidance of his prophetic father, learning faith, honesty, gratitude, compassion, and reliance upon Allah. Every evening beneath the brilliant stars of ancient Canaan, Yaqub taught his children about their ancestors Ibrahim and Ishaq. He reminded them that worldly wealth comes and goes, but faith remains the greatest inheritance a parent can leave behind. The nights of Canaan were unlike anything seen in modern cities. Without artificial lights, countless stars stretched across the heavens with astonishing clarity. Shepherds navigated by constellations. Travelers crossed deserts by observing celestial patterns. The movements of the moon and stars governed agriculture, travel, and seasonal migrations. Children grew up looking toward the heavens with wonder and reflection. One unforgettable night, while still very young, Yusuf experienced a dream unlike any ordinary dream. It was vivid, majestic, and deeply mysterious. He saw 11 stars together with the sun and the moon bowing before him. The scene filled his heart with awe rather than pride. He awoke knowing he had witnessed something extraordinary, although he could not understand its meaning. Unable to keep such a remarkable vision to himself, Yusuf approached his father with complete innocence. "O my father, indeed I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon, I saw them prostrating before me." For ordinary families, such words might have sounded like childish imagination. But Yaqub was not an ordinary father. He was a prophet receiving divine wisdom. The moment he heard Yusuf describe the dream, his heart understood that Allah had revealed a sign concerning his beloved son. Yaqub recognized that this dream was not about celestial bodies literally bowing before Yusuf. Rather, it symbolized a future in which Allah would elevate Yusuf to extraordinary honor. The 11 stars represented his brothers. The sun and moon symbolized the central figures of his family. The dream foretold a future reunion after unimaginable separation, a future in which the entire household would recognize the divine wisdom behind Yusuf's destiny. Instead of celebrating publicly, Yaqub immediately sensed danger. He knew the fragile emotional condition already growing among Yusuf's brothers. He understood how jealousy blinds reason and turns love into hostility. A prophetic father sees not only blessings but also the trials accompanying those blessings. Therefore, Yaqub gently warned his son not to share the dream with his brothers. He explained that Satan constantly seeks opportunities to create division among family members and that certain blessings should remain private until Allah chooses the proper time for them to become known. This moment became one of the earliest and greatest lessons in wisdom recorded in sacred history. Not every truth should be spoken to every listener. Not every blessing should be displayed before every eye. Sometimes protecting a gift requires silence until Allah completes His plan. Yaqub further reassured Yusuf that the same Lord who granted this remarkable dream would eventually complete His favor upon him. Just as Allah had blessed Ibrahim and Ishaq before him, He would also grant Yusuf knowledge, wisdom, and prophethood. For Yusuf, these words remained comforting but mysterious. He was still only a young boy. He could not possibly imagine deserts, slavery, prison walls, royal palaces, political power, or emotional reunion. The peaceful rhythms of life in Canaan continued as though nothing had changed. Shepherds led their flocks across the rolling hills each morning, merchants passed along ancient caravan routes carrying spices and precious goods, and families gathered around evening fires beneath skies filled with countless stars. To an outsider, the household of Prophet Yaqub appeared calm and united. Yet beneath that appearance, emotions were quietly reaching a breaking point. The brothers smiled when their father looked at them, but behind those smiles, jealousy had begun to reshape their hearts. Jealousy is unlike ordinary anger. Anger often burns brightly and then fades, but jealousy grows in silence. It feeds upon comparisons, imagined injustices, and repeated thoughts until it convinces a person that another's blessing is somehow the cause of his own unhappiness. The Quran presents the sons of Yaqub with remarkable honesty. They were not unbelievers. They belonged to the household of a prophet. They had witnessed righteousness throughout their lives. Yet even such an environment could not prevent the whispers of Shaitan from exploiting weaknesses left unguarded. As days turned into weeks, the brothers increasingly gathered among themselves, speaking privately whenever Yaqub and Yusuf were absent. At first they merely expressed frustration. "Our father loves Yusuf and his brother more than us." The words echoed repeatedly until they no longer sounded like complaints. They became convictions. "We are a strong group. We are older. We work harder. Yet our father prefers them." Each brother strengthened the resentment of the others. Instead of advising patience, they reinforced suspicion. Instead of reminding one another of Allah, they encouraged bitterness. Human beings often become more dangerous when surrounded by people who repeat their frustrations instead of correcting them. The Quran records their reasoning with extraordinary psychological precision. They declared that their father was clearly mistaken in his affection. Rather than questioning their own hearts, they questioned the judgment of a prophet. Such is the nature of envy. It gradually convinces a person that righteousness itself is unfair. Eventually their conversations reached a terrifying conclusion. If Yusuf were gone, they reasoned, our father's attention would finally return to us. This was no longer jealousy. It had become conspiracy. Among them, someone spoke the words that would forever stain the history of their family. "Kill Yusuf." The proposal hung heavily in the air. Even those consumed by envy hesitated. Despite their anger, murder remained an enormous crime. Silence followed. Then another brother suggested a different plan. "Do not kill him. Throw him into the depths of a well. Some passing caravan will pick him up and carry him away. He will disappear from our lives without our hands shedding his blood." The proposal sounded less brutal. Their consciences accepted it more easily. This is one of Shaitan's oldest strategies. He rarely persuades people to commit great evil immediately. Instead, he offers what appears to be a smaller sin, disguising it as a practical solution. The brothers convinced themselves that abandoning Yusuf in a deserted well was somehow more merciful than killing him. Then they made an even more astonishing promise to themselves. After this, we will become righteous people. These words reveal one of the deepest lessons in the entire story. People often imagine they can commit one major sin today and repent tomorrow whenever convenient. They postpone righteousness until after satisfying their desires. But sin rarely remains isolated. It produces new sins. One lie requires another. One betrayal demands another deception. One injustice creates another. The brothers believed they controlled the situation. In reality, they had already begun losing control. The following morning they approached their father with carefully prepared smiles. Years of living under Yaqub had taught them that he loved honesty and kindness. Therefore they hid their true intentions beneath affectionate words. "O our father, why do you not trust us with Yusuf? We truly wish him well. Let him come with us tomorrow. He can enjoy himself, play, and explore while we protect him." Every sentence contained outward kindness. Every sentence concealed inward deception. Prophet Yaqub listened carefully. Immediately his heart became uneasy. The request itself was not unusual. Brothers often traveled together with livestock across grazing lands. Yet something within him resisted. Perhaps it was prophetic insight. Perhaps it was the instinct of a loving father. Perhaps it was both. He answered with gentle concern. "It saddens me that you should take him away. I fear that a wolf may eat him while you are distracted." The mention of a wolf surprised the brothers. Ironically, the excuse Yaqub imagined out of fatherly concern would later become the very lie they used against him. The brothers immediately objected. "How could a wolf attack him while we are such a strong group? If that happened, we would truly be losers." Their confidence sounded convincing. Their father remained reluctant. Yet Yaqub also understood that excessive protection can sometimes create greater problems within a family. Reluctantly, he allowed Yusuf to accompany his brothers. Perhaps Yusuf himself felt excited. He had no reason to suspect betrayal. Children naturally trust their older siblings. He likely believed they were finally inviting him into their companionship. That morning he left home with hope in his heart. His father watched him disappear into the distance, unaware that this farewell would become one of the most painful moments of his entire life. The hills surrounding Canaan gradually replaced the familiar paths near their home. The brothers continued walking until they reached an isolated area far from travelers and shepherds. There, the atmosphere changed. The warmth vanished. Friendly conversations ended. Yusuf noticed unfamiliar expressions upon their faces. Confusion slowly replaced excitement. Before he could understand what was happening, the brothers surrounded him. The younger boy looked from one familiar face to another. These were not strangers. These were the brothers who had carried him as a child. The brothers who shared meals with him. The brothers who prayed alongside him. Now those same faces showed no mercy. According to reports preserved by early Muslim historians and classical commentators, Yusuf pleaded with them. He reminded each one of their family relationship. He asked what wrong he had ever committed. He begged them not to separate him from his father. Some narrations describe individual brothers hesitating while others remained determined. The exact details of these conversations differ among historical reports, and the Quran itself wisely leaves many of them unmentioned, directing attention instead toward the moral significance of the event. The brothers stripped Yusuf of the special garment he wore. That garment held emotional importance because it reflected his father's love. Removing it symbolized something greater than taking clothing. It represented their attempt to erase the place Yusuf occupied within the family. Nearby stood an abandoned well. Such wells dotted the caravan routes of the ancient Near East. Some contained water throughout the year, while others became partially dry depending upon the season. Their stone walls descended deep beneath the earth, making escape nearly impossible for anyone trapped inside. The brothers approached the edge. Far below lay darkness. Yusuf realized the horrifying truth. This was no accident. This was their plan all along. The innocent child who had trusted them now faced death or abandonment in complete isolation. No father. No mother. No friend. No shelter. Only darkness beneath him and betrayal above him. Then, without mercy, they lowered him or cast him into the well. The Quran captures this moment with remarkable brevity, yet every word carries overwhelming emotional weight. As Yusuf descended into darkness, something extraordinary happened. Allah revealed inspiration to him. Although still young, Yusuf received divine reassurance. One day, Allah promised, He would remind these very brothers of what they had done, while they would not recognize him. This revelation transformed the meaning of the tragedy. The brothers believed they had ended Yusuf's future. Allah declared they had merely begun it. The bottom of the well became the first step toward the palace. Isolation became preparation. Betrayal became the road toward leadership. Darkness became the birthplace of hope. Above the well, the brothers believed their problem had been solved. Below the well, Allah was quietly unfolding a destiny greater than any human imagination could comprehend. As evening approached, another challenge remained. How would they explain Yusuf's disappearance to their father? Then they remembered Yaqub's own words. The wolf. It was the perfect excuse. But a convincing lie requires convincing evidence. And so the brothers prepared one final deception before returning home to face the broken-hearted prophet who was already waiting for the son he loved. As the sun disappeared beyond the rugged hills of Canaan, long shadows stretched across the valleys where the sons of Yaqub began their journey home. Hours earlier they had left with 12 brothers. Now they returned with only 11. Behind them, hidden beneath layers of earth and stone, Yusuf remained alone inside the abandoned well, surrounded by darkness that seemed endless. Above him, the sky slowly filled with stars, the very stars that had appeared in his mysterious dream. He had no food, no shelter, and no certainty about what would happen next. Yet he possessed something far greater than worldly security. Deep within his heart remained complete trust in Allah. Meanwhile, his brothers walked in uneasy silence. Although they had agreed upon their plan together, each carried the burden differently. Some forced themselves to believe they had done the right thing. Others struggled to silence their consciences. Human beings often discover that committing a sin is easier than living with its memory. The excitement that accompanies wrongdoing quickly disappears, leaving behind fear, anxiety, and a constant need to protect a lie. As they neared their father's home, another problem confronted them. How should they appear? A father who had spent decades raising his children could often recognize deception simply by observing their faces. Therefore the brothers decided that tears would strengthen their story. If they arrived weeping, their grief might persuade Yaqub that they too had become victims of a terrible accident. The Quran paints this unforgettable scene with extraordinary realism. They came to their father at night, crying. Darkness itself became part of their deception. Night concealed expressions more easily than daylight. Exhaustion weakens judgment. They hoped the late hour and their emotional display would prevent careful questioning. As soon as Yaqub saw them returning without Yusuf, his heart tightened. Every loving parent understands that certain moments require no explanation. Before a single word was spoken, his soul sensed that something terrible had happened. The brothers hurried forward. "O our father! We went racing one another and left Yusuf with our belongings. Then a wolf came and devoured him. But you will never believe us, even if we are telling the truth. It was a carefully prepared speech. Notice how they defended themselves before even being accused. They anticipated disbelief because they themselves knew they were lying. The greatest deceivers often reveal themselves by attempting to answer questions that have not yet been asked. Then they produced what they believed would end all suspicion. They handed Yaqub Yusuf's shirt. Dark stains covered the fabric. This is his shirt, they implied. The wolf attacked him. The blood appeared convincing. According to many early Islamic historians and classical mufassirin, including narrations reported in the works of Ibn Kathir and others, the brothers stained the garment with the blood of an animal. Reports differ regarding whether it came from a sheep or another animal, but they agree that it was not Yusuf's blood. In their haste, however, they overlooked one crucial detail. The shirt remained completely intact. No tears. No bite marks. No damage. Only blood. Yaqub examined it carefully. He had spent a lifetime observing both people and animals. Immediately he recognized the impossibility before him. What kind of wolf devours a child yet leaves his clothing untouched? The evidence contradicted the story. The blood spoke one message. The undamaged shirt spoke another. For a brief moment, silence filled the air. The brothers waited anxiously. Would their father believe them? Would he search for Yusuf? Would everything collapse? Then Yaqub uttered words that have echoed through history for thousands of years. No. Rather, your own souls have made something seem fair to you. With those words, the prophet rejected their deception. He did not yet know exactly what had happened. He possessed no eyewitness. No physical proof. But prophetic wisdom, careful observation, and spiritual insight convinced him that the truth remained hidden. Then Yaqub pronounced one of the most beautiful expressions of faith ever recorded in the Quran. So patience is most fitting. And Allah alone is the one whose help is sought concerning what you describe. These words introduced the world to the concept later remembered as Sabr Jamil, beautiful patience. Beautiful patience does not mean pretending pain does not exist. It does not mean refusing to cry. It does not mean suppressing emotions. Rather, it means carrying overwhelming sorrow without losing trust in Allah. It means enduring suffering without accusing Allah of injustice. It means believing that divine wisdom continues operating even when human understanding cannot perceive it. Yaqub wept. His heart broke. He missed his beloved son with every passing day. Yet not once did he abandon hope in Allah. Not once did he question divine justice. His patience became nearly as legendary as Yusuf's own. Far away, inside the abandoned well, Yusuf remained unaware of the scene unfolding at home. Night covered the desert. Cold air settled deep within the stone walls. Every unfamiliar sound echoed through the darkness. Perhaps he looked upward toward the small circle of sky visible far above. Perhaps he remembered his father's comforting words about Allah's protection. Perhaps he repeated prayers taught within the household of prophets. No historical report describes every thought passing through Yusuf's mind during those lonely hours. The Quran intentionally leaves that silence intact. Sometimes silence itself conveys suffering more powerfully than detailed description. Yet Allah had not abandoned his servant. The promise revealed inside the well remained true. The story was moving exactly according to divine decree. At dawn, the ancient caravan route surrounding Canaan awakened once again. Long lines of camels crossed the desert carrying merchants from distant lands. These trading expeditions connected Egypt with Canaan, Syria, Mesopotamia, and Arabia. Their cargo included perfumes, linen, copper, leather, incense, grain, precious stones, and luxury goods destined for royal courts and bustling marketplaces. Travel through these regions demanded careful planning. Water determined every journey. Wells represented life itself. Entire routes depended upon their location. Experienced caravan leaders memorized each well across hundreds of miles of desert. It happened that one such caravan approached the very area where Yusuf had been abandoned. The travelers had no idea that history waited beneath their feet. Their leader ordered one of his men to fetch water from the nearby well. The servant lowered his bucket into the darkness below. As it descended, Yusuf noticed movement. Perhaps for the first time since his brothers had left, hope stirred within him. This might be rescue. Or it might be another unknown trial. The bucket reached him. Whether he grasped its rope immediately or was carefully lifted according to different historical narrations, the result remained the same. The servant pulled upward. The weight felt unusual. Moments later, instead of water, a young boy emerged from the depths of the well. The man stared in astonishment. His first words reflected complete amazement. What wonderful news! Here is a boy. The discovery transformed an ordinary stop for water into an unforgettable moment. The merchants quickly recognized the value of what they had found. In the ancient Near East, slavery formed an accepted part of economic life. Captives from wars, abandoned children, debtors, and victims of human trafficking were regularly bought and sold across regional markets. To these merchants, Yusuf appeared not as a lost child needing protection, but as valuable merchandise. According to the Quran, they concealed him as goods intended for sale. Human eyes saw prophet. Divine eyes saw prophecy. The brothers believed they had erased Yusuf from their lives forever. Instead, Allah had arranged transportation carrying him toward the greatest civilization of his age. Every caravan crossing the Sinai routes eventually pointed toward one destination. Egypt. The mighty kingdom along the Nile. Land of pyramids. Land of pharaohs. Land whose political influence reached across the ancient world. The road that began with betrayal inside a lonely well was now leading the young prophet toward the heart of one of history's greatest empires. Neither the merchants nor Yusuf himself yet understood that this journey would change not only his own future, but also the future of the children of Israel and the history of the entire ancient Near East. The child who had been thrown away by his own brothers was now traveling toward the kingdom where Allah would prepare him for a mission far greater than anyone could imagine. The caravan moved steadily southward, leaving behind the hills of Canaan and entering the harsh wilderness that separated two great worlds. Behind them lay the homeland where Yusuf had spent the happiest years of his childhood. Ahead stretched the vast deserts leading toward Egypt, one of the richest and most powerful civilizations on earth. Every step taken by the camels carried Yusuf farther from his father, yet every step also carried him closer to the destiny Allah had prepared long before his birth. For Yusuf, the journey was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Only days earlier he had lived within the loving household of a prophet. He awoke each morning hearing his father's gentle voice reminding the family to worship Allah. He walked freely among green pastures, played with his younger brother, and watched shepherds guide their flocks beneath the warm sun of Canaan. Now everything had changed. He traveled among strangers. His freedom had vanished. His future was uncertain. He did not know where these merchants intended to take him, nor whether he would ever see his father again. Yet despite the overwhelming uncertainty, Yusuf never lost the one possession that no human being could steal. His faith. One of the greatest themes throughout the Quranic narrative is that external circumstances never determine the true condition of a believer. Wealth may disappear. Family may be separated. Freedom may be taken away. Reputation may be destroyed. But if faith remains alive within the heart, the believer possesses a treasure greater than every kingdom on earth. The caravan itself reflected the interconnected world of the ancient Near East. Contrary to modern assumptions, civilizations such as Egypt and Canaan were not isolated societies. They were linked through extensive commercial networks stretching from the Mediterranean coast to Mesopotamia, Arabia, and even regions farther east. Merchant caravans transported olive oil, wine, copper, linen, leather, livestock, ivory, spices, incense, timber, jewelry, and precious stones. Along with merchandise traveled languages, customs, ideas, political news, and religious beliefs. For experienced traders, every journey carried risks. Sandstorms could erase entire routes within hours. Bandits frequently attacked valuable caravans. Water supplies required constant management. Wild animals sometimes threatened camps during the night. Disease could spread rapidly among travelers living together for weeks. Yet despite these dangers, commerce continued because it connected the wealth of distant kingdoms. Yusuf quietly observed everything around him. Although still young, he possessed remarkable intelligence. Every conversation between merchants became a lesson. Every unfamiliar custom broadened his understanding. Every mile introduced him to a larger world beyond the valleys of Canaan. Without realizing it, Allah was already educating his future prophet through experiences no classroom could provide. The journey eventually approached the northeastern frontier of Egypt. To ancient travelers, Egypt appeared almost miraculous. After endless stretches of dry desert, the fertile Nile Valley emerged like paradise. The annual flooding of the Nile transformed surrounding lands into fields of astonishing productivity. Wheat, barley, vegetables, dates, grapes, flax, and countless other crops flourished in rich black soil deposited by the river. While neighboring regions often depended upon uncertain rainfall, Egypt relied upon the predictable rhythms of the Nile, making it one of the most prosperous agricultural civilizations in history. Towering temples rose above the landscape. Massive statues guarded city entrances. Government officials carefully recorded taxes, harvests, trade, and construction projects. Engineers built canals connecting farms to the great river. Scribes documented transactions using hieroglyphic writing upon papyrus. Artisans crafted magnificent jewelry from gold mined deep within Nubia. Soldiers protected borders extending hundreds of miles. To someone arriving from the pastoral life of Canaan, Egypt represented an entirely different level of political organization and economic power. The merchants entered bustling markets crowded with traders from many nations. Voices speaking different languages blended into a constant roar. Perfumes filled the air. Animals crowded narrow streets. Craftsmen displayed intricate works of metal, stone, ivory, and wood. Officials inspected commercial goods. Buyers negotiated prices with practiced skill. Among the merchandise stood human beings. The slave market. Modern readers naturally view slavery with horror, and rightly so. Islam would later establish numerous pathways encouraging emancipation and dignifying enslaved people, while the broader institution remained deeply embedded in ancient societies for centuries. During Yusuf's time, however, slavery existed across virtually every major civilization of the ancient world. Captives from wars, abandoned children, debtors, and victims of kidnapping were bought and sold as property. Yusuf now stood among them. The son of prophets. The grandson of prophets. The great-grandson of Ibrahim, the friend of Allah. To human eyes, he possessed no status. No family. No influence. No wealth. Only Allah knew the true value of the young man standing before potential buyers. The Quran records an astonishing detail. The merchants sold Yusuf for only a few silver coins. They considered him of little value. This statement carries profound irony. The greatest treasure in the marketplace became the cheapest purchase. History repeatedly demonstrates this truth. Human beings often fail to recognize genuine worth. They admire power while ignoring integrity. They pursue wealth while overlooking wisdom. They celebrate appearances while neglecting character. The merchants believed they had completed an ordinary business transaction. In reality, they had unknowingly transferred the future leader of Egypt into the household chosen by Allah. Among those visiting the market that day was one of Egypt's most influential officials. The Quran refers to him simply as Al-Aziz, a title meaning the mighty one or the powerful one. Classical scholars explain that this title referred to a senior government authority serving directly under the ruler of Egypt. Historical opinions differ regarding his exact office. Some identify him as the royal treasurer, others as the chief minister responsible for state administration. Whatever the precise position, all agree that he belonged to the highest ranks of Egyptian leadership. Unlike many buyers seeking laborers for difficult work, Al-Aziz immediately noticed something unusual about Yusuf. Perhaps it was the boy's remarkable dignity despite his circumstances. Perhaps it was the calm intelligence visible upon his face. Perhaps Allah simply placed affection for Yusuf within his heart. Whatever the reason, Al-Aziz purchased him and brought him into his own household. That decision would alter the course of Egyptian history. When Al-Aziz returned home, he spoke words preserved forever in the Quran. He instructed his wife. Make his stay honorable. Perhaps he will benefit us, or we may adopt him as a son. These words reveal a striking contrast with the actions of Yusuf's brothers. His brothers had looked upon him and seen a burden. This Egyptian official looked upon the same young man and saw potential. His brothers wished to remove him from their lives. This stranger welcomed him into his home. His brothers abandoned him in darkness. This foreign statesman ordered that he be treated with dignity. Allah often replaces what people unjustly take away with something unexpectedly greater. The home of Al-Aziz differed dramatically from anything Yusuf had previously known. Instead of simple tents and grazing lands, he entered an elegant residence reflecting the wealth of Egypt's ruling class. Servants attended daily responsibilities. Storerooms overflowed with grain. Fine linen decorated living quarters. Officials frequently visited for political discussions. Educated scribes recorded administrative matters. Luxury surrounded every corner of the estate. Yet despite the abundance, Yusuf never forgot his origins. He remained the son of Prophet Yaqub. He remembered the lessons taught beneath the open skies of Canaan. Material comfort did not erase spiritual discipline. The Quran then reveals one of the most important principles governing Yusuf's entire life. Thus we established Yusuf in the land. Notice the wording. Human beings might conclude that Al-Aziz established Yusuf. The Quran attributes the event directly to Allah. Behind every visible cause stands the invisible decree of the Creator. The caravan believed it transported merchandise. The merchants believed they completed a profitable sale. Al-Aziz believed he purchased a promising servant. Each participated in the story. But Allah alone directed the outcome. The verse continues by explaining another purpose behind Yusuf's arrival in Egypt. Allah intended to teach him the interpretation of events and dreams. The mysterious vision of 11 stars, the sun, and the moon had not been forgotten. Its fulfillment had only begun. Within the peaceful walls of Al-Aziz's household, Yusuf would grow from a frightened child into an extraordinary young man. He would receive knowledge, wisdom, maturity, and divine guidance. He would learn the language of Egypt. He would observe the administration of one of history's greatest kingdoms. He would witness politics, economics, diplomacy, agriculture, and governance from inside the highest circles of power. None of these experiences were accidents. Each formed part of Allah's preparation. Because the boy who had once been sold for a handful of silver coins was being trained to one day save an entire civilization from catastrophe. Years passed, and the frightened child who had entered Egypt as an unknown slave gradually became a young man admired by everyone who knew him. Time possesses a remarkable power. It softens painful memories, matures character through experience, and quietly prepares people for responsibilities they could never have carried in their youth. Yusuf's heart still longed for his father and younger brother, but he refused to allow grief to define his life. Instead, every passing year deepened his trust in Allah and strengthened the noble qualities that had distinguished him since childhood. Inside the household of al-Aziz, Yusuf received opportunities that few servants ever experienced. Because of his honesty, intelligence, and discipline, greater responsibilities were entrusted to him. He managed property with fairness, handled important tasks carefully, and earned the confidence of everyone around him. Servants respected him. Administrators appreciated his reliability. Those who interacted with him quickly recognized that he possessed a level of integrity rarely found in positions involving wealth and authority. Classical Muslim scholars explain that Allah blessed Yusuf not only with extraordinary physical beauty but also with exceptional wisdom, gentle speech, patience, humility, and emotional maturity. These qualities made him stand apart wherever he went. True greatness has never depended upon appearance alone. Beauty may capture attention for a moment, but character earns lasting respect. The Quran summarizes these years with profound simplicity. When Yusuf reached full maturity, we granted him wisdom and knowledge. Thus do we reward those who excel in doing good. This verse reveals an important principle repeated throughout the Quran. Knowledge is one of Allah's greatest gifts. Wisdom is an even greater gift. Knowledge teaches a person what is true. Wisdom teaches him how and when to apply that truth. Allah combined both within Yusuf. His education extended far beyond reading or observation. It included spiritual insight granted directly by the Creator. Meanwhile, Egypt continued flourishing as one of the ancient world's greatest kingdoms. Its government maintained enormous grain reserves, supervised irrigation systems, expanded trade with neighboring lands, and built magnificent monuments honoring kings and religious beliefs. The Egyptian elite enjoyed luxury unmatched across much of the ancient Near East. Yet beneath the splendor existed deep moral and spiritual corruption. Like many civilizations before and after it, Egypt possessed immense technological achievement but widespread religious confusion. Its people worshipped numerous gods associated with the sun, the Nile, animals, fertility, kingship, and natural forces. Temples dominated city life. Priests held tremendous influence. Statues of deities filled sacred spaces. Festivals celebrated mythological traditions passed from generation to generation. Within this environment lived Yusuf, a prophet devoted entirely to the worship of the one true God. He neither adopted Egyptian polytheism nor allowed social pressure to weaken his beliefs. His faith remained as pure inside Egypt as it had been beneath the tents of his father in Canaan. This unwavering commitment distinguished him from everyone around him. As Yusuf matured, another blessing granted by Allah became increasingly apparent. His beauty. Authentic narrations describe Yusuf as among the most handsome human beings ever created. When the Prophet Muhammad spoke about the night journey and ascension, he mentioned seeing Yusuf in the heavens and described him as having been granted half of all beauty. Classical scholars explained that Yusuf's beauty was extraordinary not because of vanity or pride but because it reflected Allah's creative perfection. His appearance inspired admiration without arrogance. His dignity elevated rather than corrupted him. Unfortunately, extraordinary beauty often becomes a test as much as a blessing. The greater the gift, the greater the responsibility. The household of al-Aziz included his wife, known in Islamic historical literature by the name Zuleika, although the Quran itself does not mention her personal name. The Quran simply refers to her as the wife of al-Aziz. This deliberate choice shifts attention away from personalities and toward moral lessons that remain relevant for every generation. As Yusuf grew into adulthood, Al-Aziz's wife observed him daily. She witnessed his honesty. She admired his intelligence. She saw his dignity, self-control, and remarkable appearance. Gradually, admiration transformed into something dangerous. Instead of controlling her emotions, she allowed them to grow unchecked. Desire became obsession. Obsession became temptation. Temptation eventually sought opportunity. One day, while the household remained quiet, she carefully arranged circumstances to isolate Yusuf. Doors were closed one after another. Privacy was ensured. Every visible obstacle disappeared. Then she openly invited Yusuf toward sin. The Quran describes the moment with astonishing brevity, yet every word carries immense emotional power. She said, "Come to me." For Yusuf, this moment represented one of the greatest tests of his entire life. Consider every factor surrounding him. He was young. He was unmarried. He lived far from his family. He possessed no social protection. The woman inviting him belonged to the highest levels of Egyptian society. She controlled the household in which he lived. Rejecting her could destroy everything he had built over many years. Accepting her would remain hidden from public view. From a purely worldly perspective, every apparent advantage favored giving in to temptation. Yet believers measure success differently. Yusuf's first response revealed the foundation of his entire character. "I seek refuge in Allah." Before thinking about consequences. Before considering reputation. Before worrying about punishment. He remembered Allah. The fear of Allah outweighed every worldly attraction. Then Yusuf reminded her of another important truth. He said that her husband had treated him honorably. Betraying such kindness would itself be an act of terrible injustice. His loyalty extended not only toward Allah but also toward the man who had rescued him from slavery and welcomed him into his home. Yusuf understood that gratitude forms an essential part of faith. One does not repay kindness with betrayal. The Quran declares with complete clarity, "Indeed, the wrongdoers never succeed." For Yusuf, success meant preserving his relationship with Allah, even if doing so cost him everything else. According to the Quran, the woman continued pursuing him with determination. Yusuf attempted to escape. He did not remain arguing. He did not negotiate. He fled. This detail carries enormous wisdom. When confronting temptation, the believer's safest strategy is often distance rather than debate. As Yusuf hurried toward the exit, she chased after him. In desperation, she grabbed his shirt from behind. The fabric tore. At that exact moment, the door opened. Standing before them was Al-Aziz. Everything changed within an instant. Moments earlier, the woman had been pursuing Yusuf. Now she immediately reversed the narrative. Instead of admitting her actions, she accused Yusuf. What should be the punishment for someone who intended evil toward your wife except imprisonment or painful punishment? This scene illustrates another timeless reality. Those who knowingly commit wrongdoing sometimes attempt to protect themselves by accusing the innocent. History repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. False accusations often become the final weapon of those whose own guilt has been exposed. Yusuf calmly answered, "It was she who sought to seduce me." Two opposing claims now stood before Al-Aziz. No witnesses. No confession. Only conflicting testimonies. At this critical moment, Allah provided unexpected evidence. A member of the household proposed examining Yusuf's torn shirt. If the shirt had been torn from the front, it would suggest Yusuf had approached her. If it had been torn from the back, it would prove Yusuf had been fleeing while she pursued him. The evidence was simple. Objective. Undeniable. The garment told the truth that words attempted to hide. When the shirt was examined, it was torn from behind. The conclusion became obvious. Yusuf had spoken the truth. The wife of Al-Aziz had lied. Al-Aziz looked upon the evidence and recognized what had happened. He addressed his wife, acknowledging that this deception belonged among the schemes into which human beings can fall when desire overcomes righteousness. Then he turned toward Yusuf. Rather than punishing him, he instructed him to ignore the matter. He also told his wife to seek forgiveness for her wrongdoing because she had clearly been at fault. From a legal perspective, Yusuf had been completely vindicated. His innocence had been established. The crisis appeared finished. But inside the magnificent homes and crowded marketplaces of Egypt, secrets rarely remained hidden for long. Whispers soon began spreading through the city. Women from influential families started discussing the astonishing incident. They laughed at the wife of Al-Aziz. They mocked her for becoming so deeply infatuated with a young servant. Their gossip traveled from one household to another, growing louder with every retelling. None of them realized that they themselves were about to face a test that would leave all of Egypt speechless. News traveled quickly through the noble houses of Egypt. Within days, what had begun as a private incident inside the residence of Al-Aziz became the subject of conversation among the city's wealthiest families. The wives of government officials, military commanders, merchants, and members of the royal court gathered in elegant halls, exchanging whispers behind carefully hidden smiles. The wife of Al-Aziz has fallen deeply in love with her own servant. How could a woman of such status lose control over herself? She has humiliated her family. We cannot imagine what she saw in him. Their words carried more mockery than sympathy. They judged from a distance without understanding the reality. They assumed they were wiser. They believed they would never make such a mistake. The Quran records their conversations with remarkable precision. The women in the city said, "The wife of Al-Aziz is trying to seduce her servant. He has captivated her with love. Surely we see her in obvious error." The wife of Al-Aziz soon learned of their gossip. Instead of responding with anger alone, she devised a plan. If these women believed they could easily resist Yusuf's appearance, then she would allow them to judge with their own eyes. She prepared a magnificent gathering inside her residence. The halls were decorated with expensive fabrics imported from distant lands. Fine perfumes filled the air. Servants arranged luxurious seating for each guest. Elegant meals were prepared according to the customs of Egypt's aristocracy. Every invitation was accepted. Curiosity itself became stronger than social etiquette. Each woman wished to discover the truth. When they arrived, servants placed fruit before every guest. According to most classical tafsir works, including the explanations of Ibn Kathir and al-Qurtubi, each woman also received a sharp knife for cutting the fruit. Nothing about the arrangement appeared unusual. Conversation flowed naturally. The women expected little more than another afternoon of noble entertainment. Then, at the carefully chosen moment, the wife of Al-Aziz quietly instructed Yusuf to enter the room. Yusuf knew nothing about the purpose behind the invitation. He simply obeyed the instruction given to him. As he walked into the gathering, every conversation stopped. Silence spread throughout the hall. The women looked toward the entrance. For a brief moment, none of them remembered the fruit resting in their hands. None remembered the knives they held. They stared at Yusuf in complete astonishment. The Quran describes the scene with unforgettable power. When they saw him, they were so amazed that they cut their hands and said, "Allah forbid. This cannot be a human being. This is none other than a noble angel." Their reaction was spontaneous. Without realizing it, they sliced their own hands while continuing to gaze at Yusuf. The pain barely registered. Their amazement overwhelmed every other sensation. The Quran does not mean they literally believed Yusuf was an angel. Rather, they expressed overwhelming astonishment. In their minds, no ordinary human being could possess such extraordinary beauty, dignity, and presence. At that moment, the wife of Al-Aziz finally spoke. Her words carried both pride and frustration. "This is the one for whom you blamed me." She openly admitted that she had indeed attempted to seduce Yusuf. Then she declared something even more alarming. She warned that if Yusuf continued refusing her wishes, she would ensure that he would be imprisoned and humiliated. The test that had begun in private now became public. The pressure upon Yusuf increased dramatically. He no longer faced temptation from one individual alone. He now stood surrounded by some of the most influential women in Egypt. Social pressure, political influence, wealth, status, and desire all combined against one young believer. Most people would have surrendered. Many would have justified compromise. Others might have feared the consequences of resistance. Yusuf chose an entirely different path. Instead of asking Allah for wealth, instead of asking for power, instead of asking for revenge, he made one of the most extraordinary prayers recorded in the Quran. "My Lord, prison is more beloved to me than what they invite me toward. Unless you turn their plot away from me, I may incline toward them and become among the ignorant." These words reveal the extraordinary humility of Prophet Yusuf. He did not boast that temptation held no danger. He did not claim perfect strength. Instead, he acknowledged his complete dependence upon Allah. He understood that no human being overcomes temptation through personal power alone. Every victory over sin is ultimately a mercy from Allah. This prayer remains one of the greatest lessons for believers throughout history. Rather than trusting himself, Yusuf trusted his Lord. The Quran immediately informs us that Allah answered his prayer. So his Lord responded to him and turned away their plot from him. Indeed, he is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. The response, however, arrived in a form that few people would have expected. Human beings often imagine that answered prayers always remove hardship. Allah sometimes answers by replacing one hardship with another that protects the believer's faith. Soon afterward, Egypt's ruling elite faced a difficult political problem. The scandal surrounding Yusuf refused to disappear. Rumors continued spreading throughout the city. Every conversation threatened the reputation of powerful families. Although Yusuf had been proven innocent, influential people feared public embarrassment more than justice. The easiest solution seemed obvious. Remove Yusuf from public view. The Quran summarizes their decision in only a few words. It appeared to them, after they had seen the signs of his innocence, that they should imprison him for a time. Notice the remarkable irony. The guilty remained free. The innocent entered prison. History has witnessed this tragedy countless times. Prophets, reformers, scholars, and righteous people have often suffered because truth threatened those holding power. Yusuf was not imprisoned because he committed a crime. He was imprisoned because he refused to commit one. The gates of the prison closed behind him. The elegant residence of Al-Aziz disappeared from view. Luxury gave way to stone walls. Comfort disappeared. Freedom vanished. Years of faithful service ended not with honor, but with chains. From a worldly perspective, Yusuf's life seemed to move backward. As a child, he had lost his family. As a young man, he had lost his freedom. Every time stability appeared within reach, another trial emerged. Yet the Quran quietly reminds the reader that Allah's plan never stopped unfolding. The well had not destroyed Yusuf. Slavery had not destroyed Yusuf. False accusations had not destroyed Yusuf. Neither would prison. In reality, the prison would become another classroom prepared by Allah himself. Behind those walls, Yusuf would meet men whose dreams would open the doors to the royal palace. Behind those walls, his reputation for wisdom, honesty, and faith would spread farther than ever before. Behind those walls, Allah would begin preparing the final stage of the extraordinary destiny first revealed on the night when a young boy looked toward the heavens and saw 11 stars, the sun, and the moon bowing before him. The prison of ancient Egypt stood far from the magnificent palaces that symbolized royal authority. Thick stone walls surrounded its courtyards. Narrow corridors echoed with the footsteps of guards carrying bronze-tipped spears. Iron doors separated prisoners from the outside world, while small windows allowed only narrow beams of sunlight to enter the cold chambers. Unlike the luxurious estates of Egypt's ruling class, the prison represented a forgotten world where criminals, debtors, political prisoners, and those who had fallen out of favor with powerful officials lived together in uncertainty. For many people, prison marked the end of hope. For Yusuf, it became the beginning of another chapter in Allah's perfect plan. From the very first days of his imprisonment, Yusuf distinguished himself from everyone around him. He did not surrender to despair. He did not spend his days complaining about injustice. He did not curse those who had falsely accused him. Instead, he remained exactly as he had always been, honest, patient, kind, humble, and devoted to the worship of Allah. The guards quickly noticed his character. The prisoners trusted his words. Those who shared his cell discovered that Yusuf treated every human being with dignity regardless of their social status or crimes. Whether speaking to servants, laborers, officials, or condemned prisoners, he displayed the same respect and compassion. This behavior surprised many. Most prisoners became bitter. Most allowed anger to consume their hearts. Yusuf allowed hardship to strengthen his faith instead. His prison cell gradually became a place of comfort for those carrying emotional burdens. Men sought his advice during moments of fear. They watched him pray with complete sincerity. They listened as he spoke truthfully, never exaggerating, never lying, never seeking personal gain. True righteousness cannot remain hidden for long. Eventually, 2 new prisoners entered the prison. Unlike ordinary inmates, these men had previously served inside the royal palace itself. According to the Quran, one had been responsible for preparing the king's drinks, while the other worked in charge of baking bread for the royal household. Classical historians explain that both men had fallen under suspicion in connection with an alleged plot involving the king. Whether guilty or innocent remains uncertain, and the Quran wisely leaves those historical details unmentioned because they do not affect the moral lessons of the story. Both men soon noticed Yusuf. They observed his calm behavior. They admired his noble manners. They sensed that he possessed unusual wisdom. Then, on separate nights, each experienced a dream that disturbed his heart. The first prisoner approached Yusuf and said, "I dreamed that I was pressing grapes to make wine." The second prisoner then spoke. "I dreamed that I was carrying bread upon my head, and birds were eating from it." Neither man understood the meaning of his dream. Yet both trusted Yusuf enough to seek his interpretation. They explained why. "Indeed, we see you as one of those who excel in goodness." This statement reveals something extraordinary. Yusuf had entered prison with no reputation, no family connections, no political influence. Yet through nothing more than noble character, he had earned the respect of complete strangers. People trusted him because they witnessed integrity. Before interpreting their dreams, Yusuf recognized a remarkable opportunity. He understood that these men had approached him seeking answers. Before satisfying their curiosity, he first wished to guide their hearts toward the truth. Rather than beginning immediately with dream interpretation, Yusuf gently introduced them to the worship of Allah. He explained that the knowledge he possessed came not through magic, fortune-telling, or superstition. It came from Allah. He declared that he had abandoned the false religions followed by many people around him and instead followed the faith of his forefathers Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub. Then Yusuf asked one of the most profound questions recorded in the Quran. Are many different masters better, or Allah, the One, the Supreme? This question reached beyond Egypt. Beyond prison. Beyond history itself. Human beings have always served something. Some serve wealth. Others serve power. Some serve their desires. Others serve public opinion. Yusuf reminded them that true freedom begins when a person worships only Allah. His dawah inside prison demonstrates one of the defining characteristics of every prophet. Circumstances never prevented them from calling people toward truth. Whether living in palaces or prisons. Whether honored or humiliated. Whether surrounded by kings or criminals. Their mission remained unchanged. Only after delivering this powerful reminder did Yusuf return to the dreams themselves. He addressed the first prisoner. You will return to serving wine to your master. The meaning became clear. His imprisonment would end. He would once again serve the king. Then Yusuf turned toward the second prisoner. As for you, you will be executed, and birds will eat from your head. The room fell silent. One interpretation brought hope. The other brought heartbreaking certainty. Dream interpretation was not guesswork. Allah had granted Yusuf genuine knowledge. The decree had already been decided. Then Yusuf made a simple request to the first prisoner. When you return to the king's service, remember me before your master. Mention my situation. Tell him that an innocent man remains imprisoned. Perhaps justice will finally come. The man promised. Everything appeared ready. Soon he would leave prison. Soon he would stand once more before the ruler of Egypt. Soon he would speak Yusuf's name. Yet once again, events unfolded according to Allah's wisdom rather than human expectation. The first prisoner's dream came true exactly as Yusuf had predicted. He was released. He resumed serving the king. The second prisoner's dream also came true. He was executed. Everything happened precisely as Yusuf had foretold. Only one part remained. Remembering Yusuf. But after returning to palace life, surrounded by luxury, responsibility, and daily routine, the former prisoner forgot. The Quran states that Shaitan caused him to forget mentioning Yusuf to the king. As a result, Yusuf remained in prison. Not for days. Not for weeks. But for several more years. This moment teaches another timeless lesson. Believers often place hope in people. People forget. People become distracted. People make promises they fail to keep. Allah alone never forgets. If Yusuf had been released through the recommendation of a former prisoner, many would have credited human influence. Allah intended something greater. He intended Yusuf to leave prison through an event so extraordinary that no one could deny divine wisdom. Those additional years were not wasted. Every day increased Yusuf's patience. Every prayer strengthened his relationship with Allah. Every conversation refined his wisdom. Sometimes what appears to be delay is actually preparation. The prison continued shaping the future leader of Egypt. Far away, life continued inside the royal palace. The king governed his kingdom. Officials managed trade and agriculture. Farmers cultivated the fertile land surrounding the Nile. Everything appeared stable. No one suspected that Egypt itself stood only a few years away from one of the greatest economic disasters in its history. The warning would arrive in the same way Yusuf's own destiny had first begun. Through a dream. A dream so mysterious that the fate of an entire civilization would soon depend upon the forgotten prisoner sitting quietly behind the stone walls of an Egyptian prison. For years, the prison remained Yusuf's home. Seasons changed beyond the prison walls. The annual flood of the Nile continued nourishing Egypt's fertile fields. Harvests came and went. Children were born. Kings held court. Merchants crossed the deserts with their caravans. Life moved forward for everyone else. Inside the prison, however, time seemed to stand still. Many prisoners counted the days until their release. Others abandoned hope altogether. Yusuf counted neither. His heart remained attached not to calendars, but to Allah. Every prayer strengthened his patience. Every hardship deepened his faith. Every year increased the wisdom that Allah had placed within him. Unknown to Yusuf, the moment of his release was approaching. Not because influential people had remembered him. Not because new evidence had appeared. Not because powerful friends had spoken on his behalf. His freedom would begin with something no human being could control. A dream. One night, the king of Egypt experienced a vision unlike any he had ever seen. When morning arrived, the dream continued troubling his heart. It felt too vivid to ignore. Too unusual to dismiss. Too important to forget. He immediately summoned the greatest advisors, priests, astrologers, scribes, and dream interpreters in the kingdom. The royal court assembled. The king then described what he had witnessed. Indeed, I saw 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean cows. And I saw 7 green ears of grain and 7 others that were dry. Silence filled the palace. The dream made no ordinary sense. Healthy cows being consumed by starving cows. Fresh green grain standing beside dried ears. Every symbol appeared connected, yet no one understood the message. The king looked toward his advisors. You who claim knowledge, he demanded, explain my dream if you truly possess the ability to interpret dreams. The greatest minds of Egypt exchanged uncertain glances. Some whispered among themselves. Others attempted symbolic explanations. Finally they reached an embarrassing conclusion. These are merely confused dreams. We do not know how to interpret such visions. Their admission exposed an important reality. Human knowledge has limits. Titles cannot replace wisdom. Power cannot manufacture understanding. Those celebrated as experts sometimes stand helpless before problems that only Allah can solve. Among those present in the royal court stood the former cupbearer. Years earlier he had shared Yusuf's prison cell. Years earlier Yusuf had interpreted his dream with perfect accuracy. Years earlier he had promised to remember Yusuf. And years earlier, he had forgotten. The king's strange dream suddenly awakened memories buried deep within his mind. He remembered the righteous young prisoner. He remembered Yusuf's calm confidence. He remembered how every interpretation had come true exactly as foretold. Overwhelmed by the realization, he stepped forward. I can inform you of its interpretation. Send me. Permission was granted immediately. Without delay, the former prisoner hurried toward the prison that he had left so many years before. Imagine that moment. The prison gates opened once again. The guards escorted him through familiar stone corridors. Eventually he stood before the same man whom he had forgotten. Yusuf. Years had passed. Yet Yusuf greeted him without bitterness. No anger. No accusation. No resentment. He did not say, "You finally remembered me." He did not remind him of broken promises. Such forgiveness reflected the character of a prophet. The former prisoner explained everything. He described the king's mysterious dream exactly as it had been seen. Then he asked Yusuf to provide its meaning. Without hesitation. Without consulting books. Without requesting time to think. Yusuf interpreted the dream through the knowledge Allah had granted him. He explained that the 7 healthy cows represented 7 consecutive years of extraordinary harvests. The 7 thin cows represented 7 years of severe famine that would follow. The 7 green ears of grain symbolized years of abundance. The 7 dry ears symbolized years of devastating drought and scarcity. But Yusuf did far more than interpret the dream. He presented a complete economic strategy. He instructed that during the 7 years of abundance, the people should cultivate the land with maximum effort. Most of the harvest should remain stored carefully in its ears rather than being consumed immediately. Only a small portion should be used for daily needs. This method would naturally preserve the grain for many years. When the famine eventually arrived, Egypt would possess enough reserves to survive. Then Yusuf revealed one final detail. After the 7 difficult years, another year would come. Rain would return. The land would recover. People would once again press grapes, olives, and other crops. Hope would follow hardship. Relief would follow patience. The former prisoner listened with amazement. This was not merely dream interpretation. It was national planning. Agricultural management. Economic policy. Long-term crisis preparation. Yusuf had provided Egypt with a complete blueprint for surviving one of the greatest disasters in its history. He hurried back to the palace. Standing before the king and the assembled officials, he repeated Yusuf's explanation exactly as he had heard it. The royal court fell silent. No one questioned the logic. No one laughed. Every symbol now made perfect sense. The king immediately recognized that the mysterious prisoner possessed extraordinary wisdom unlike anyone else in Egypt. He issued an order. "Bring him to me." The command spread rapidly through the palace. Messengers hurried toward the prison. The long years of confinement appeared finally over. The prison doors prepared to open. Freedom waited. Yet what happened next surprised everyone. Most prisoners would have rushed out immediately. Most would have accepted release without asking questions. Yusuf did neither. He calmly refused to leave. The messenger stared in confusion. Why would anyone reject freedom? Yusuf explained that before appearing before the king, the truth regarding the accusations against him had to become publicly known. He wanted no hidden suspicion remaining over his character. His innocence had already been proven years earlier inside the house of al-Aziz. Yet the public still knew only rumors. If he accepted freedom without clearing his name, people might forever whisper that the former prisoner had escaped punishment through royal favor. A prophet's honor mattered more than immediate comfort. Yusuf therefore requested that the king investigate the women who had cut their hands. Ask them what truly happened. Ask them who pursued whom. Ask them who spoke the truth. The request reached the palace. The king immediately ordered a formal investigation. The women who had attended the famous banquet were summoned. Years had passed since that extraordinary day. Time often changes people. Fear fades. Consciences awaken. The king questioned them directly. What happened when you attempted to seduce Yusuf? The answer came without hesitation. We seek refuge in Allah. We know no evil concerning him. Those same women who had once remained silent now openly testified to Yusuf's innocence. Then came the most remarkable confession of all. The wife of al-Aziz herself stood before the king. Years earlier she had lied to protect herself. Now she chose truth over pride. She declared before everyone. Now the truth has become clear. I was the one who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is among the truthful. With those words, every accusation collapsed. Every rumor died. Every doubt disappeared. The prisoner who had entered jail as a falsely accused servant now emerged before the entire kingdom as a man whose honesty had been confirmed even by those who had once plotted against him. Allah had not merely freed Yusuf. Allah had restored his honor. Because in the divine plan, the leader who would soon govern Egypt's greatest crisis could not rise carrying even the shadow of a false accusation. The royal court stood in silence after hearing the confession. For years, Egypt had believed that Yusuf's imprisonment resulted from some hidden crime. Rumors had spread through marketplaces, noble houses, and government offices. Many assumed that where there was imprisonment, there must also have been guilt. Now the truth stood before everyone. The women had testified. The evidence had been confirmed. The wife of al-Aziz herself had admitted her deception. Yusuf was completely innocent. More importantly, his innocence had not been established through political influence or personal connections. It had been established openly, publicly, and beyond dispute. This moment reflected one of Allah's greatest forms of justice. Sometimes truth appears delayed. Sometimes lies seem victorious for years. Sometimes the innocent suffer while the guilty enjoy comfort. But when Allah chooses the proper moment, truth emerges with such clarity that no human being can suppress it. The king listened carefully. Everything he had heard about the mysterious prisoner now fit together. A man who refused temptation. A man whose dream interpretations always proved true. A man who remained patient despite years of injustice. A man who refused release until his reputation had been completely restored. Such qualities were rarely found even among the highest officials of the kingdom. The king immediately issued another command. Bring him to me. This invitation differed from the previous one. Before, Yusuf had been summoned simply because of his knowledge. Now he was being invited because of both his wisdom and his proven integrity. The prison gates opened once more. This time, Yusuf walked out as a free man. The guards who had once watched over him no longer saw a prisoner. They watched a man whose dignity had only increased through suffering. The journey from the prison to the royal palace must have stirred many memories. He remembered the well. He remembered the caravan. He remembered the slave market. He remembered the house of al-Aziz. He remembered the false accusation. He remembered every lonely prayer whispered inside his prison cell. Each hardship now formed part of a perfect chain leading him toward this very moment. As Yusuf entered the royal palace, he encountered a world unlike any he had seen before. The halls were vast. Massive stone columns supported towering ceilings decorated with colorful paintings. Walls displayed scenes of Egyptian victories, harvests, and religious ceremonies. Golden ornaments reflected sunlight streaming through high windows. Guards wearing elaborate uniforms stood at attention beside enormous doors. Officials carrying scrolls moved between administrative chambers. The palace represented the political heart of one of the world's greatest civilizations. Standing at its center was the king. It is important to note that the Quran consistently refers to Egypt's ruler during Yusuf's lifetime as the king rather than Pharaoh. Classical Muslim scholars have long observed this distinction. Later prophets, including Musa, Moses, confronted rulers whom the Quran calls Pharaoh. During Yusuf's era, however, the Quran uses the title king, a distinction that many historians have considered significant when discussing different historical periods of ancient Egypt. The king welcomed Yusuf with respect. This meeting differed greatly from ordinary royal audiences. Instead of questioning Yusuf as a suspect, the king sought his counsel. He recognized that wisdom represented a greater treasure than gold. After speaking with Yusuf and witnessing his intelligence firsthand, the king made a remarkable declaration. Today you are established in our presence, trusted and secure. These words changed everything. Only a short time earlier, Yusuf had possessed nothing. No freedom. No wealth. No influence. Now the ruler of Egypt himself declared him trustworthy. Trust. Not beauty. Not strength. Not wealth. Trust became the foundation upon which Yusuf's future would be built. Then Yusuf made a request that has fascinated scholars for centuries. He said, "Appoint me over the storehouses of the land. Indeed, I am a knowledgeable guardian." Some readers unfamiliar with prophetic character may wonder why Yusuf requested such responsibility. Was this ambition? Was it self-promotion? The answer given by classical Islamic scholars is clear. No. Yusuf did not seek authority for personal honor. He recognized that Allah had uniquely prepared him for the crisis revealed through the king's dream. Allowing someone less qualified to manage Egypt's food supply would place millions of lives at risk. Sometimes accepting leadership becomes an obligation rather than a desire. Notice the qualities Yusuf mentioned. He did not praise his appearance. He did not boast about noble ancestry. He identified two essential characteristics: knowledge, trustworthiness. Competence without honesty leads to corruption. Honesty without competence leads to failure. Effective leadership requires both. The king immediately accepted Yusuf's proposal. Thus, the former slave became one of the highest officials in Egypt. The transformation appeared almost unbelievable. A child abandoned in a well. Sold for a handful of silver coins. Falsely accused. Imprisoned for years. Now entrusted with protecting one of history's greatest kingdoms from disaster. Only Allah could arrange such a journey. Yusuf immediately began implementing the economic strategy revealed through Allah's guidance. Throughout Egypt, new storage facilities were constructed. Existing granaries were expanded and strengthened. Government officials carefully measured harvests. Accurate records were maintained. Farmers received instructions regarding preservation techniques. Rather than consuming the years of abundance carelessly, Egypt prepared for the future. The policy demanded discipline. During times of prosperity, people naturally assume good times will continue forever. Yusuf understood otherwise. Wise leaders prepare during abundance for the hardships that eventually arrive. The first year produced extraordinary harvests. Fields overflowed with grain. The Nile flooded exactly as expected. Storehouses filled steadily. The second year proved equally successful. Then the third. The fourth. The fifth. The sixth. The seventh. Every year confirmed the accuracy of Yusuf's interpretation. Some people undoubtedly questioned the necessity of storing so much grain. Why not enjoy prosperity while it lasted? Why save for disasters that had not yet arrived? Yusuf remained steadfast. He trusted Allah's revelation more than public opinion. At the conclusion of the seventh year, Egypt possessed enormous reserves unlike anything in its history. Then, the rains changed. The fertile rhythm of nature began to falter. Harvests declined. Fields that had once produced abundance yielded little. The drought spread gradually across the surrounding lands. The first year of famine had begun. Soon villages throughout Egypt experienced food shortages. Neighboring regions suffered even more severely. Caravan routes that once carried luxury goods now transported desperate people searching for grain. Families sold valuable possessions simply to survive. Livestock perished. Prices rose. Fear spread from one kingdom to another. Yet inside Egypt, the granaries remained full. The nation possessed enough food not only for its own people, but also for surrounding countries devastated by the famine. The wisdom Allah had granted Yusuf years earlier was now saving millions of lives. News spread across the ancient Near East. There was food in Egypt. There was a government prepared for the crisis. There was an official distributing grain with justice and wisdom. Among those who heard this astonishing news, far away in the land of Canaan, was an elderly prophet named Yaqub. Years had passed since he had last seen his beloved son. His eyesight had weakened from endless grief. His heart still carried the pain of separation. The famine now threatened his household as well. With food supplies running dangerously low, Yaqub made a difficult decision. He called his sons together. The very brothers who had once abandoned Yusuf in the well. And he gave them a command that would begin the final and most emotional chapter of Yusuf's extraordinary story. Travel to Egypt. And obtain grain for our family. The famine continued spreading across the ancient world with relentless force. What had begun as a gradual decline in harvests soon became a regional catastrophe. Rivers beyond the Nile produced less water. Grazing lands dried beneath the scorching sun. Wells that had sustained villages for generations sank lower each month. Across Canaan, Syria, and neighboring lands, families struggled to preserve the little food they still possessed. Livestock weakened. Trade slowed. Entire communities faced the frightening possibility of starvation. Yet Egypt stood apart. Its vast granaries, carefully filled during the 7 years of abundance, now supplied grain not only to its own population but also to travelers arriving from distant kingdoms. Caravans lined the roads leading toward Egyptian cities. Merchants, shepherds, tribal leaders, and ordinary families journeyed for weeks across the desert, hoping to purchase enough food to save their loved ones. At the center of this immense operation stood Yusuf. His responsibilities extended far beyond simple administration. He supervised storage. He organized transportation. He prevented corruption. He ensured that supplies were distributed fairly. He protected the kingdom from hoarding and exploitation. The prosperity of Egypt no longer depended merely upon fertile land. It depended upon honest leadership. Every decision carried enormous consequences. One mistake could cost thousands of lives. One act of favoritism could create injustice throughout the nation. Yusuf ruled with wisdom, discipline, and complete reliance upon Allah. Although he possessed tremendous authority, he remained humble. He never forgot the darkness of the well. He never forgot the loneliness of prison. He never forgot that every blessing came only from Allah. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Canaan, Prophet Yaqub watched the famine tighten its grip upon his household. Age had bent his back. Years of grief over Yusuf had whitened his hair. His eyesight had grown weaker after countless nights spent weeping for the son he believed lost forever. Yet despite his sorrow, Yaqub never abandoned hope in Allah. He continued leading his family with patience and faith. As food supplies diminished, he gathered his sons. They were no longer the reckless young men who had plotted against Yusuf years earlier. Time had changed them. The burden of their hidden crime had remained inside their hearts throughout the passing years. Outwardly they had built families and continued daily life. Inwardly they carried a secret known only to themselves and Allah. Yaqub addressed them calmly. He instructed them to travel to Egypt and purchase grain. The journey would be long. The roads dangerous. But there was no alternative. Without food, the family could not survive. One instruction, however, stood above all others. Benjamin would remain at home. Yaqub refused to allow his youngest son to accompany the caravan. The memory of Yusuf's disappearance still haunted him. He could not bear the thought of losing another son born to the same beloved mother. The brothers accepted their father's decision. Soon preparations began. Camels were loaded. Water supplies were secured. Money for purchasing grain was carefully packed. Then the caravan departed Canaan, following the ancient trade routes leading south toward Egypt. The same roads that had once carried Yusuf away as a helpless slave now carried his brothers toward him as desperate travelers. None of them knew what awaited them. None imagined that the powerful Egyptian official responsible for distributing grain was the very brother they had abandoned decades earlier. Time had transformed everything. The frightened child had become one of the most influential men in the ancient world. The brothers who once considered themselves strong now depended upon the mercy of a foreign government for survival. After many exhausting days crossing deserts and rocky landscapes, the caravan finally entered Egypt. The brothers were immediately struck by the kingdom's remarkable organization. Despite the widespread famine, order remained everywhere. Government officials carefully registered arriving caravans. Storage facilities operated with remarkable efficiency. Long lines of travelers waited patiently for their allocations of grain. Armed guards protected the storehouses against theft. Everything reflected careful planning. The brothers eventually reached the administrative center where grain distributions were supervised. There, seated with the dignity of a statesman and the wisdom of a prophet, was Yusuf. Years had changed his appearance. He now wore the clothing of Egypt's highest officials. He spoke the language of Egypt fluently. Responsibility had matured his features. Authority surrounded him. The brothers approached respectfully, never suspecting the truth. The Quran records the unforgettable moment with breathtaking simplicity. They entered upon Yusuf, and he recognized them, but they did not recognize him. Imagine the emotions that flooded Yusuf's heart. Standing before him were the very men who had once thrown him into a well. The faces had grown older. Their hair showed signs of age. Their expressions reflected years of hardship. Yet Yusuf recognized every one of them immediately. He remembered their voices. He remembered their names. He remembered the day his world had changed forever. The brothers, however, saw only an Egyptian governor. Never could they imagine that the child they had betrayed now stood before them holding authority over their survival. At that moment, Yusuf possessed complete power. He could have ordered their arrest. He could have exposed their crime before the entire court. He could have taken revenge for every year of suffering. Instead, he remained silent. This silence revealed extraordinary self-control. Yusuf understood that Allah's plan had not yet reached its conclusion. The dream of his childhood remained only partially fulfilled. The reunion with his father had not yet occurred. Benjamin was still absent. Therefore, Yusuf concealed his identity. Not out of cruelty. Not out of revenge. But because wisdom sometimes requires patience even when justice appears within reach. As governor, Yusuf questioned travelers from foreign lands. This served practical purposes. Egypt needed accurate records. Authorities monitored immigration during the famine. Resources had to be distributed carefully. When Yusuf questioned his brothers, he learned about conditions in Canaan. He also discovered that his father remained alive. These words filled his heart with gratitude. After so many years, Yaqub still lived. Then Yusuf learned something else. His younger brother Benjamin had remained behind. The moment he heard Benjamin's name, memories of childhood flooded back. Benjamin had been only a small child when Yusuf disappeared. Now he had grown into adulthood. Yusuf longed to see him. The brothers explained that their father had refused to let Benjamin travel. Yusuf listened carefully. Then he devised a plan that would bring Benjamin to Egypt without exposing his own identity prematurely. After arranging for their grain to be loaded, he addressed them with generosity. He treated them honorably. He gave them full provisions. Then he said, "Bring to me your brother from your father. Do you not see that I give full measure and that I am the best of hosts?" His words sounded reasonable. If they returned with another family member, they would receive additional provisions during the next distribution. Then Yusuf added a firm condition. But if you do not bring him to me, there will be no grain for you from me, nor shall you come near me. The brothers immediately agreed. We shall try to persuade our father. We will certainly do so. Yusuf nodded calmly. Outwardly, the meeting appeared complete. Inwardly, however, he prepared another remarkable step. Without informing his brothers, he instructed his trusted servants to secretly return the money they had used to purchase the grain. The silver coins were quietly placed back inside their travel bags. Why? Classical scholars have offered several complementary explanations. Yusuf wished to encourage their return. He wanted to ease his father's financial burden. He desired to demonstrate generosity. Most importantly, he wanted another reason for the brothers to come back to Egypt. The servants obeyed. The money disappeared into the luggage unnoticed. The caravan departed. As the brothers left Egypt, Yusuf watched them disappear into the distance. Once again, they were leaving him behind. Just as they had done years earlier. But this time everything was different. They left carrying food instead of hatred. They departed under his protection rather than his fear. And unlike the first separation, Yusuf knew with certainty that they would return. Because Allah's promise made inside the darkness of the well was moving steadily toward its fulfillment. Very soon, Benjamin would arrive in Egypt. And for the first time in decades, the two sons of Yaqub born to the same mother would embrace once again. The caravan journeyed back toward Canaan with renewed hope. The camels carried precious sacks of grain, enough to sustain Yaqub's household for a time. Every member of the caravan felt relief. They had succeeded in obtaining food from Egypt when countless other families had returned empty-handed. More surprising still, the powerful Egyptian governor had treated them with unusual generosity and respect. None of the brothers understood why. To them, he was simply an honorable official. To Yusuf, they were the family he had not seen for more than 20 years. The long road home gave the brothers plenty of time to discuss the governor. They admired his fairness. They spoke of his intelligence. They praised the discipline of Egypt's administration. Never once did the thought cross their minds that the man they respected so deeply was the very brother they had betrayed in childhood. After many days of travel, the familiar hills of Canaan appeared on the horizon. Yaqub waited anxiously. Each returning caravan raised his hopes. His greatest concern was not merely the grain. He wanted to know whether his sons had returned safely. When at last they reached home, the family gathered around them. The grain was unloaded. The journey was described. Then the brothers delivered the governor's message. Our father, we have been denied future provisions unless we bring our younger brother with us. Send Benjamin with us next time so that we may receive our full measure of grain. The moment Yaqub heard those words, old wounds reopened. His face changed. Pain returned to his heart. He looked at his sons and remembered another day long ago. Another request. Another promise. Another beloved son. His reply came with unmistakable sorrow. Shall I trust you with him as I trusted you with his brother before? The question struck every one of them. No accusation could have pierced their hearts more deeply. They understood exactly whom their father meant. Yusuf. The name had never disappeared from their memories. For years they had lived with the weight of their deception. Now their father unknowingly reminded them once again. Yet Yaqub ended his words with complete faith. Allah is the best guardian, and He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. These words reflected the heart of a prophet. He no longer placed complete reliance upon human promises. His ultimate trust belonged only to Allah. As the family unpacked the grain, another surprise awaited them. One by one, the brothers discovered their money hidden inside their baggage. The silver they had paid in Egypt had somehow been returned. Confusion filled the room. They examined every sack carefully. The money was all there. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing was missing. The brothers hurried to their father. "Our father. What more could we ask for? Our payment has been returned to us. We can use this money to purchase more grain. If Benjamin accompanies us, we will receive an extra camel load of food." From a practical perspective, their argument made perfect sense. The famine continued. Food remained scarce. The returned money meant they could buy even more supplies. The additional ration for Benjamin would benefit the entire household. Still, Yaqub hesitated. His fear was not irrational. He had already lost one beloved son after trusting these same brothers. He refused to repeat that mistake easily. Finally, after much discussion, Yaqub agreed on one condition. He demanded a solemn covenant before Allah. Each brother must swear that they would protect Benjamin and return him safely unless completely overpowered by circumstances beyond human control. This was no ordinary promise. It was an oath made before Allah. Breaking such a covenant carried enormous spiritual responsibility. The brothers accepted without hesitation. Perhaps this time they genuinely intended to fulfill their promise. Years of maturity and hidden guilt had changed them. After receiving their pledge, Yaqub entrusted Benjamin to their care. Before they departed, however, he offered one final piece of fatherly advice. He instructed them not to enter Egypt through a single gate. Instead, they should enter separately through different gates of the city. Classical scholars have explained this advice in several ways. Many understood that Yaqub wished to protect his sons from the evil eye. A large group of strong brothers entering together might attract unnecessary attention or envy. Others noted practical security reasons. Whatever the precise wisdom, Yaqub immediately reminded them of an even greater truth. His advice itself could not change Allah's decree. Protection ultimately belonged to Allah alone. "I cannot avail you against Allah at all. The decision belongs only to Allah. Upon Him I have relied, and upon Him let those who rely place their trust." These words summarize one of Islam's most beautiful principles. Believers take practical precautions. Then they place complete trust in Allah. Preparation and reliance go together. Neither replaces the other. The caravan departed once again. Benjamin traveled among his older brothers, unaware that the most extraordinary reunion of his life lay just ahead. They crossed the same deserts. Followed the same caravan routes. Eventually the magnificent cities of Egypt appeared once more. Remembering their father's advice, the brothers entered through different gates. The Quran beautifully notes that although this fulfilled Yaqub's wishes, it could not alter Allah's decree in the slightest. The advice represented loving concern. The outcome remained entirely within Allah's knowledge. Soon the brothers appeared once again before the governor of Egypt. Yusuf immediately recognized Benjamin. Years disappeared within a single heartbeat. Before him stood his younger brother. The child who had shared his mother's love. The last living connection to the happiest days of his childhood. Benjamin, however, saw only the powerful Egyptian official. He had been too young to remember Yusuf clearly when the tragedy occurred. Time had transformed his older brother beyond recognition. Yusuf completed the public business calmly. No emotion appeared upon his face. No hint revealed his identity. Only after the formal proceedings ended did he quietly arrange for Benjamin to remain behind privately. Away from the eyes of the other brothers. Away from servants. Away from officials. The two brothers finally stood alone. Yusuf looked at Benjamin with deep emotion. Years of separation ended in that silent moment. Then he gently revealed the truth. Indeed, I am your brother. So do not grieve over what they used to do. Imagine Benjamin's astonishment. The brother he had believed lost forever. Alive. Standing before him. Not merely alive. But governing Egypt. The years of sorrow, confusion, and unanswered questions suddenly began making sense. The two brothers embraced after decades of separation. Their reunion remained hidden from everyone else. Yusuf likely learned everything he had longed to know. How their father had endured. How life in Canaan had changed. How Benjamin himself had grown through the years. Benjamin, in turn, learned the incredible story of the well, slavery, prison, and Allah's miraculous plan. The joy of reunion was immense. Yet another difficult challenge remained. Yusuf knew that Benjamin could not simply announce the truth and leave with him. The dream shown in childhood had not yet reached its completion. Their father had not yet arrived. The brothers had not yet faced the full consequences of their actions. Therefore, under Allah's guidance, Yusuf prepared another step in the divine plan. It would test the hearts of his brothers once more. It would reveal how much they had truly changed. And it would set in motion the events leading to one of the most emotional family reunions in all of sacred history. Before the caravan departed Egypt, Yusuf quietly instructed his trusted servants to place the royal measuring cup inside Benjamin's luggage. The royal measuring cup was one of the most important objects used in Egypt's system of grain distribution. It was not merely an ordinary vessel. It represented the authority of the kingdom itself. Officials used it to ensure fairness in measuring grain throughout the famine. Losing such an item would immediately trigger an official investigation. Every servant understood its importance. Every guard knew that its disappearance could not be ignored. After revealing his identity privately to Benjamin, Yusuf carefully explained the next stage of Allah's plan. The Quran does not record every detail of their conversation, but it makes clear that everything occurred according to Allah's wisdom. Benjamin trusted his brother completely. He understood that Allah had preserved Yusuf through impossible trials for a far greater purpose. He placed his trust in both Allah and his brother. Meanwhile, outside the private chambers, the older brothers remained unaware of everything. To them, their business in Egypt had concluded successfully. They had obtained grain. Benjamin had received his share. Soon they would begin the long journey back to Canaan. Everything appeared normal. Before their departure, Yusuf quietly instructed one of his trusted servants to place the royal measuring cup inside Benjamin's baggage. The command was carried out discreetly. No one among the traveling brothers noticed anything unusual. Only Allah, Yusuf, Benjamin, and those entrusted with the task knew what had happened. The Quran then reveals one of its most profound reminders. Thus we planned for Yusuf. These words emphasize an essential truth. This was not a scheme driven by revenge. It was part of Allah's decree. Classical scholars explain that under the legal system of Egypt, Yusuf could not simply keep Benjamin with him. However, according to the law practiced by the family of Yaqub, anyone found guilty of stealing could become the servant of the person from whom the property had been stolen. Allah arranged events in a manner that fulfilled justice while remaining within lawful authority. As the caravan prepared to leave Egypt, an official announcement suddenly echoed through the marketplace. O people of the caravan! You are surely thieves. The brothers froze. Travelers looked around in confusion. Guards hurried toward the departing camels. The accusation shocked everyone. The sons of a prophet had never been known for theft. They immediately turned back toward the officials. What have you lost? The officers replied. We are missing the king's measuring cup. Whoever returns it shall receive a camel load of grain, and I guarantee it." The brothers answered with complete confidence. "By Allah! You know well that we did not come to spread corruption in this land, nor are we thieves." Their words were sincere. None of them knew the cup had been placed inside Benjamin's belongings. The Egyptian officials then asked, "What should be the punishment if you are found to be lying?" Without hesitation, the brothers answered according to the law they themselves followed. "The one in whose baggage it is found shall himself become the penalty." They unknowingly pronounced the very ruling that would soon apply to Benjamin. The search began. Yusuf personally supervised the process with remarkable wisdom. The Quran carefully notes that he first searched the baggage of the older brothers before examining Benjamin's. This detail removed every appearance of favoritism or prearranged planning. One by one, each sack was opened. Nothing appeared. Another bag. Still nothing. The tension grew. The brothers became increasingly confident that the accusation would soon be disproved. Finally, the search reached Benjamin's baggage. The servants untied the sack. They looked inside. Then, before everyone's eyes, the royal measuring cup emerged. Silence swept across the gathering. The brothers stared in disbelief. Benjamin remained calm. Yusuf maintained the composure expected of Egypt's chief administrator. The evidence appeared undeniable. The cup had been found. The brothers could hardly believe what they were seeing. Benjamin, the quietest among them, the son whom their father trusted most. How could this happen? Shock quickly gave way to confusion. Then, instead of defending Benjamin with complete certainty, one of the brothers spoke words that revealed an old wound still lingering within their hearts. "If he has stolen, then a brother of his stole before." The statement referred to Yusuf. The Quran does not explain the exact incident they intended. Classical commentators mention various historical reports, some weak and some stronger, regarding childhood misunderstandings involving Yusuf. Because no authentic evidence establishes that Yusuf ever committed theft, Muslim scholars emphasize that the accusation itself was false. The brothers, even after all these years, allowed old suspicions to influence their words. When Yusuf heard this accusation, his heart must have felt the weight of the past once again. First they had thrown him into a well. Then they had lied to their father. Now, decades later, they casually repeated another false accusation against him. Yet Yusuf did not respond with anger. The Quran says, Yusuf kept it within himself and did not reveal it to them. What extraordinary self-control! Power often tempts people toward immediate revenge. Yusuf possessed every opportunity to expose them publicly. Instead, he remained patient. He quietly thought to himself that their own condition was far worse than what they accused him of. But he left the judgment to Allah. According to the law that the brothers themselves had acknowledged, Benjamin now had to remain in Egypt. The older brothers immediately realized the disaster awaiting them. How could they return to Canaan without him? What would they tell their father? How could they face the man who had reluctantly entrusted Benjamin to their care only after taking a solemn oath before Allah? Desperation filled their hearts. They approached Yusuf respectfully. "O mighty one! His father is an old man. Take one of us in his place. Indeed, we see you as one who does good." Their request reflected genuine concern. Years earlier, they had willingly abandoned one brother. Now they offered themselves in Benjamin's place. This marked a profound change in their character. Guilt, maturity, and years of hardship had transformed them. Yusuf listened carefully. Then he answered with complete justice. "We seek refuge in Allah from taking anyone except the one with whom we found our property." Otherwise, we would truly be unjust. No ruler can establish justice by punishing the innocent instead of the one legally responsible. Yusuf's answer reflected fairness, not cruelty. The brothers stood speechless. Their arguments had failed. Benjamin would remain in Egypt. The caravan that had left Canaan with 11 brothers would once again return with only 10. History seemed to repeat itself. Only this time. The brothers experienced the same fear, helplessness, and heartbreak that their father had endured for so many years. Allah was preparing their hearts for complete repentance. The final barriers of pride were beginning to crumble. Very soon. The secret hidden inside Yusuf's heart for decades would finally be revealed. And the words spoken in childhood beneath the stars would reach their astonishing fulfillment. The brothers left the palace in complete silence. Only moments earlier they had entered with confidence, expecting to begin the journey home. Now everything had changed. Benjamin remained in Egypt, held under the law they themselves had declared. Their grain was ready. Their camels were prepared. Yet none of them felt relief. Their greatest burden was no longer the famine. It was their father. How could they stand before Prophet Yaqub and tell him that Benjamin had not returned? The memory of Yusuf's disappearance returned to every one of them. Years earlier, they had invented a story about a wolf. Years earlier, they had watched their father collapse beneath the weight of grief. Years earlier, they had promised to protect his beloved son. Now history appeared to repeat itself. The eldest among the brothers, according to many classical scholars identified as Reuben in biblical tradition, though the Quran does not name him, gathered the others together. He reminded them of the solemn oath they had sworn before Allah. Do you not know that your father took from you a solemn covenant in the name of Allah? And before this, you failed regarding Yusuf. Those words pierced every heart. For the first time in the Quranic narrative, the brothers openly acknowledged their failure concerning Yusuf. The hidden crime that had haunted them for decades now stood before them like a mountain they could no longer ignore. The eldest brother made a firm decision. I will never leave this land until my father permits me or Allah judges for me. And he is the best of judges. He refused to return to Canaan. He could not bear to face his father after breaking another promise. The remaining brothers had no choice. Someone had to return home. Someone had to explain what had happened. They mounted their camels and began the long journey back across the desert. Every mile felt heavier than the last. During the journey they carefully discussed exactly what they would say. This time there would be no lie. There could be no lie. Too many witnesses had seen the events. Too many officials had participated in the search. Truth itself had become their only defense. After many days, they finally reached Canaan. Yaqub watched them approach from a distance. Immediately he noticed something was wrong. Benjamin was not among them. His heart tightened once again. As the brothers entered their father's presence, they lowered their heads. One of them finally spoke. "O our father, your son has been accused of theft. We testify only to what we know, and we could not have known the unseen." They explained everything exactly as it had happened. They described the governor, the search, the discovery of the royal measuring cup, the judgment according to their own law. Then they pleaded with their father. "If you do not believe us, ask the people of the town where we stayed and ask the caravan with which we traveled. Surely we are telling the truth." This time they offered witnesses. This time they invited investigation. This time they spoke honestly. Yet Yaqub's response revealed that his heart still carried the scars of the past. He said, "No. Rather, your souls have made something seem fair to you." The words echoed those spoken years earlier after Yusuf disappeared. Then once again, Yaqub uttered the phrase that had become the foundation of his life. "So beautiful patience is most fitting." But this time he added something remarkable. "Perhaps Allah will bring them all back to me." Notice his words carefully. He did not say Benjamin alone. He said all of them. Deep within his heart, the hope that Yusuf still lived had never completely died. Years of grief had not extinguished his trust in Allah. Many historians and Mufassirin explain that Yaqub continued believing Yusuf remained alive because he understood the extraordinary dream his son had seen in childhood. Allah's promises never fail. If the dream had not yet been fulfilled, then Yusuf's story could not yet be over. After speaking these words, Yaqub turned away from his sons. His grief overwhelmed him. The Quran describes one of the most emotional scenes in sacred history. He cried, "Oh, my sorrow over Yusuf." Then the Quran tells us something heartbreaking. His eyes became white from grief, for he was suppressing his sorrow. According to the majority of classical scholars, Yaqub gradually lost his eyesight because of the intensity of his continuous weeping. Imagine the depth of this pain. More than 20 years had passed. Most people would have accepted that Yusuf had died. Yaqub never stopped loving him. He never stopped missing him. He never stopped hoping. The brothers watched their father mourn. Some felt helpless. Others felt crushing guilt. Finally they spoke. "By Allah, you will continue remembering Yusuf until you become gravely ill or perish." They could not understand how their father still spoke of Yusuf after so many years. Yaqub answered with one of the most beautiful declarations of faith in the Quran. "I complain of my sorrow and grief only to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you do not know." These words distinguish sincere faith from despair. Yaqub did not deny his sadness. He did not pretend to be unaffected. He simply directed his pain toward Allah instead of bitterness. Every tear became a prayer. Every sigh became an act of worship. Every moment of loneliness strengthened his relationship with his Lord. Then, despite his age and blindness, Yaqub surprised his sons with a command they never expected. "O my sons, go and search for Yusuf and his brother. And do not despair of relief from Allah. Indeed, none despairs of relief from Allah except the disbelieving people." Those words filled the room with astonishment. Search for Yusuf. After all these years? Could he truly still be alive? The brothers had no answer. But they had learned something through years of hardship. Whenever their father spoke with such certainty, Allah's wisdom was never far behind. They obeyed. Once again, preparations were made. Once again, the brothers loaded their camels. Once again, they turned their faces toward Egypt. This journey differed from every previous one. They carried little wealth. Their supplies had diminished. The famine had left them poor. More importantly, their hearts had changed. The arrogance that once led them to throw Yusuf into a well had disappeared. Pride had been replaced by humility. Confidence had become desperation. They no longer approached Egypt as strong brothers. They approached as men broken by hardship, seeking mercy. As they entered Egypt for the third time, they stood before Yusuf once again. This time their appearance reflected the famine's devastating effects. Their clothes showed signs of poverty. Their faces carried exhaustion. Their voices lacked the confidence they once possessed. They addressed Yusuf respectfully. "O mighty ruler, hardship has afflicted us and our family. We have brought only goods of little value. So give us full measure and be charitable to us. Indeed, Allah rewards those who are charitable." The words deeply moved Yusuf. For decades he had waited for this moment. His brothers now stood before him, not as proud young men driven by jealousy, but as humble servants asking for kindness. The time had finally come. The long journey that began with a dream, passed through a well, crossed the slave markets of Egypt, endured years in prison, and rose to the highest office in the kingdom, was about to reach its breathtaking conclusion. Yusuf looked into the faces of the men who had changed the course of his life forever. Then he asked a single question. One question. Simple, gentle, yet powerful enough to stop every heartbeat in the room. Do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? At that moment, the past returned all at once. The well, the blood-stained shirt, the tears of their father, the decades of guilt. Every memory came rushing back. The brothers stared at the governor in stunned silence. A terrifying thought entered their minds. Only one person in all the world could have asked that question. The room fell into complete silence. The brothers stood motionless before the governor of Egypt. His question echoed through their hearts again and again. Do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? No ordinary Egyptian official could possibly know such details. No foreign ruler could have known about the private events that had taken place decades earlier in the lonely hills of Canaan. No witness had survived that moment except the brothers themselves. And Yusuf. One by one, they looked carefully at the man standing before them. For the first time, they truly studied his face. The dignity, the calmness, the gentle way he spoke, the familiar expression in his eyes, the kindness that had seemed strangely personal during each of their visits. Suddenly, scattered memories from childhood began fitting together. Their hearts raced. Could it really be possible? The youngest brother, Benjamin, stood quietly nearby. His peaceful expression seemed to confirm what they were beginning to suspect. Finally, trembling with disbelief, one of the brothers spoke. Are you, indeed Yusuf? The question hung in the air. Years of separation. Years of guilt. Years of unanswered prayers. All waited upon a single reply. Yusuf answered with words that have echoed throughout history. I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has certainly been gracious to us. Indeed, whoever fears Allah and remains patient, then surely Allah never allows the reward of those who do good to be lost. The truth struck the brothers like lightning. The governor before whom they had bowed with respect. The man from whom they had begged for food. The ruler who possessed authority over their lives. Was the little brother they had abandoned inside a well. Shock overwhelmed them. Their minds struggled to comprehend everything. The frightened child had become one of the greatest leaders in Egypt. The brother they had sold for almost nothing now controlled the grain that sustained entire nations. The dream they had unknowingly tried to prevent had come true before their own eyes. Many years earlier, Yusuf had seen 11 stars, the sun, and the moon bowing before him. Now his brothers stood before him in humility. Not because Yusuf desired honor, but because Allah's promise never fails. Overcome by shame, the brothers lowered their heads. There was no longer any excuse. No denial. No argument. They admitted everything. By Allah. Allah has certainly preferred you over us, and indeed we have been sinners. These words marked the complete collapse of their pride. The jealousy that had once filled their hearts had disappeared. Instead came sincere repentance. They no longer compared themselves to Yusuf. They no longer blamed their father. They blamed only themselves. True repentance begins when a person stops making excuses. Yusuf listened quietly. This was the moment many people would have imagined for decades. The perfect opportunity for revenge. He possessed absolute authority. He could imprison them. He could humiliate them publicly. He could force them to experience the same suffering he had endured. Yet prophets do not allow hatred to rule their hearts. Instead, Yusuf spoke one of the most beautiful sentences ever recorded in the Quran. There is no blame upon you today. No blame. Not tomorrow. Not after punishment. Not after humiliation. Today. Immediately. Completely. He forgave them. Then he continued. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Notice something extraordinary. Yusuf did not merely forgive. He prayed that Allah would forgive them as well. This represents one of the highest examples of prophetic character. He responded to betrayal with mercy. He answered hatred with compassion. He replaced revenge with forgiveness. Centuries later, the Prophet Muhammad would recite these very words on the day he entered Mecca victorious. After years of persecution, exile, and war, he addressed the people of Quraysh by saying, There is no blame upon you today. Just as Yusuf forgave his brothers, Muhammad forgave those who had driven him from his homeland. The stories of the prophets formed one continuous chain of mercy. The brothers wept. Years of hidden guilt poured out through tears. The burden they had carried for decades finally began to lift. The family that jealousy had nearly destroyed now stood on the edge of reconciliation. But one person still remained far away. Yaqub. The father who had never stopped believing. The father whose eyes had turned white from grief. The father who still waited in Canaan. Yusuf immediately thought of him. He removed his own shirt. Not the blood-stained shirt that had once been carried to Yaqub as part of a terrible lie. A different shirt. A shirt carrying hope instead of despair. He handed it to his brothers. Take this shirt of mine and place it over my father's face. His sight will return. Then bring your entire family to me. The symbolism could not have been more powerful. Years earlier, a shirt had caused Yaqub unimaginable sorrow. Now, another shirt would become the means of unimaginable joy. The brothers accepted it with trembling hands. This time they carried truth instead of deception. Hope instead of lies. Healing instead of heartbreak. Without delay, they prepared for the journey back to Canaan. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, something remarkable happened. Before the caravan had even reached home, Yaqub suddenly lifted his head. Those around him noticed a change in his expression. Then he spoke words that puzzled everyone. Indeed, I perceive the fragrance of Yusuf, although you may think me mistaken. The people around him responded gently. By Allah, you are still in your old state of longing. They believed grief had caused him to imagine impossible things. How could anyone smell a person from such a distance? Yet prophets perceive realities that ordinary people cannot. Classical scholars explain that Allah allowed Yaqub to sense Yusuf's fragrance as a miracle announcing the approaching reunion. Every passing mile brought the caravan closer. The brothers traveled with urgency. They no longer feared the journey. They longed to erase the pain they had caused their father. At last, the familiar hills of Canaan appeared. The family home stood waiting. The brothers hurried forward. One of them approached Yaqub carrying Yusuf's shirt. With trembling hands, he gently placed it across his father's face. The miracle happened instantly. The Quran states, when the bearer of good news arrived, he placed it upon his face, and he regained his sight. Darkness disappeared. Vision returned. Years of blindness ended in a single moment by Allah's permission. The first thing Yaqub saw was not merely the faces of his sons. He saw the fulfillment of Allah's promise. His eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Then he gently reminded them. Did I not tell you that I know from Allah what you do not know? The brothers could no longer restrain themselves. They fell before their father in complete humility. Our father, ask Allah to forgive our sins. Indeed, we have been sinners. The confession they had delayed for decades finally reached the one person they had hurt most. Yaqub looked upon his repentant sons with the heart of a prophet. He did not reject them. He did not curse them. Instead he promised, I shall ask my Lord to forgive you. Indeed, He is the all-forgiving, the most merciful. The family prepared immediately for one final journey. Not toward grain. Not toward survival. But toward reunion. The house that had lived for decades under the shadow of sorrow was now traveling toward Egypt, where a father and son, separated for more than 20 years, were finally about to embrace once again. The caravan leaving Canaan was unlike any journey the family had ever undertaken. Years earlier, the sons of Yaqub had traveled toward Egypt carrying fear, uncertainty, and hidden guilt. This time they traveled with hope. The burden that had weighed upon their hearts for more than 2 decades had finally begun to lift. The truth had been revealed. Yusuf was alive. Benjamin was safe. Yaqub's eyesight had been restored by the permission of Allah. Every mile across the desert brought the family closer to a reunion they had once believed impossible. The elderly Prophet Yaqub rode at the center of the caravan, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. His heart overflowed with gratitude. For more than 20 years he had endured separation without surrendering to despair. Many people had considered his hope unrealistic. Some believed his grief had clouded his judgment. Yet Allah had transformed what the world considered impossible into reality. This journey itself became a lesson for every generation. Hope placed in people may disappoint. Hope placed in Allah never does. The road toward Egypt crossed the same deserts where Yusuf had once traveled as a helpless child. Yet the circumstances could not have been more different. Then, he had traveled as a slave. Now, his family traveled as honored guests invited by one of the greatest officials in the ancient world. Then, he had possessed nothing except faith. Now, Allah had granted him honor, authority, wisdom, and the opportunity to save entire nations from famine. Every hardship had ultimately become a step towards something greater. Meanwhile, Yusuf eagerly awaited news of his family's arrival. Although he now governed one of Egypt's most important institutions, his thoughts constantly returned to the approaching reunion. He had forgiven his brothers. He had embraced Benjamin. Only one longing remained. His father. The man who had taught him about Allah beneath the clear skies of Canaan. The man whose prayers had accompanied him throughout every stage of his life. The man who had never stopped believing that Allah's promise would one day be fulfilled. As reports reached the palace that the caravan from Canaan had entered Egyptian territory, Yusuf personally prepared to receive his family. He did not send ordinary officials. He did not remain seated upon his throne. Instead, the Quran tells us that he went out to welcome them. This simple detail reveals the humility of a prophet. True greatness never distances itself from loved ones. When the caravan finally came into view, Yusuf saw familiar faces approaching through the desert. Years disappeared in an instant. The elderly man walking toward him was no longer the strong shepherd who had guided his childhood. Time had bent his back. His beard had turned completely white. The marks of countless tears remained visible upon his face. Yet Yusuf recognized him immediately. Likewise, Yaqub recognized the beloved son he had mourned for more than 20 years. No words could adequately express that moment. A father who had believed his son dead now saw him standing alive before his eyes. A son who had been stolen from his family as a child now stood once again before the Father whose love had never faded. The Quran beautifully summarizes the reunion. And he raised his parents upon the throne. Before entering the palace, Yusuf embraced his parents with overwhelming affection. According to many classical scholars, the word parents here refers to his father Yaqub and his maternal aunt, who had cared for him after the death of his mother, Rachel. Other historical discussions exist, but this has been a common explanation among many early commentators. There were no accusations. No complaints. No discussion of lost years. Only gratitude. Only love. Only praise for Allah. Yusuf then welcomed his entire family into Egypt. The years of famine no longer threatened them. They would live under the protection of the kingdom that Allah had entrusted to Yusuf. Soon afterward came the moment that fulfilled the mysterious dream seen during Yusuf's childhood. The Quran describes it with remarkable elegance. And they all fell before him in respect. The members of his family bowed before Yusuf according to the respectful custom practiced in that era. Classical scholars explain that this prostration was not an act of worship. In the laws of previous prophets, such gestures could be expressions of honor and respect. In the Sharia brought by Prophet Muhammad, however, prostration is reserved exclusively for Allah. At that very moment, Yusuf remembered the dream that had changed his life decades earlier. He turned toward his father and said, "O my father, this is the fulfillment of my dream of long ago. My Lord has made it come true." Every symbol now became clear. The 11 stars. His 11 brothers. The sun and the moon. The central figures of his family. The dream that had once seemed impossible had unfolded exactly as Allah had promised. Not a single detail had failed. Yusuf then reflected upon the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this moment. He did not boast about his own patience. He did not praise his own intelligence. He did not congratulate himself for surviving hardship. Instead, he attributed everything to Allah. He was certainly good to me when he took me out of prison and brought you here from the desert after Satan had caused discord between me and my brothers. Notice something remarkable. Yusuf mentioned prison. He did not mention the well. Many scholars have reflected upon this beautiful choice of words. The well represented his brother's greatest crime. By not mentioning it, Yusuf protected them from unnecessary embarrassment in front of their father. Even while recounting Allah's blessings, he continued shielding those who had wronged him. Such was the nobility of prophetic character. Then Yusuf declared one of the greatest truths in the Quran. Indeed, my Lord is subtle in what he wills. Indeed, he is the all-knowing, the all-wise. Allah's plans often remain hidden while they unfold. The brothers believed they were removing Yusuf from their lives forever. In reality, they were sending him toward leadership. The merchants believed they were purchasing a slave. In reality, they were transporting a future prophet. The officials believed they were imprisoning an innocent man. In reality, they were preparing him for the palace. Every apparent disaster concealed divine wisdom. Standing before his reunited family, surrounded by honor, wealth, and authority, Yusuf did not ask Allah for a longer life. He did not ask for greater power. He did not ask for more riches. Instead, he offered one of the most beautiful prayers ever recorded. My Lord, you have certainly granted me authority and taught me the interpretation of events. Creator of the heavens and the earth, you are my protector in this world and the hereafter. Cause me to die as one who submits to you, and join me with the righteous. This prayer reveals the true measure of success. After receiving everything the world could offer, Yusuf's greatest desire remained a righteous ending. Kings seek larger kingdoms. Merchants seek greater wealth. Prophets seek Allah's pleasure. That difference defines their greatness. With the family reunited, the years of sorrow finally came to an end. The house that had once echoed with grief now echoed with gratitude. The brothers who had once been divided by jealousy now lived together in reconciliation. The father who had wept until blindness overtook him now looked upon his beloved son every day. The dream beneath the stars had become reality. Not through human effort alone. Not through coincidence. But through the perfect wisdom of Allah, who controls every moment of history. Thus ended one of the greatest journeys ever recorded. A journey that began with envy. Passed through betrayal. Crossed deserts. Endured slavery. Survived temptation. Entered prison. Saved a civilization. Healed a broken family. And forever became what Allah Himself called, the best of stories. Lessons from the life of Prophet Yusuf AS. The story of Prophet Yusuf AS is far more than the biography of one prophet. Allah Himself describes it in the Quran as Ahsan al-Qasas, the best of stories, Surah Yusuf 12:3. It is the only prophetic story in the Quran narrated almost entirely from beginning to end in one continuous chapter. Every event, every hardship, every delay, and every victory carries timeless lessons for every generation. One of the greatest lessons is that Allah's plan is always greater than human plans. The brothers believed they were removing Yusuf forever by throwing him into a well. The slave traders believed they were buying an ordinary servant. The wife of Al-Aziz believed she controlled Yusuf's future. The officials believed prison would silence him. Yet every decision made by human beings unknowingly pushed Yusuf closer to the destiny Allah had already written. The Quran repeatedly teaches that human beings plan, but Allah is the best of planners. Yusuf's entire life became living proof of this truth. Another lesson is that patience is not weakness. Modern society often confuses patience with surrender. Yusuf demonstrated something entirely different. He was patient when abandoned. Patient when sold. Patient as a slave. Patient before temptation. Patient after false accusations. Patient inside prison. Patient after being forgotten. Patient after becoming powerful. True patience does not mean remaining inactive. It means continuing to obey Allah while waiting for His decree. Likewise, Prophet Yusuf AS demonstrated another form of patience. His patience was not silent despair. It was hopeful patience. He cried. He grieved. He missed his son every single day. Yet he never lost hope in Allah. He never accused Allah of injustice. He never abandoned worship. His famous words remain among the greatest expressions of faith. I complain of my sorrow and grief only to Allah. This teaches believers that expressing sadness to Allah is not a weakness. It is worship. Another profound lesson concerns forgiveness. Few people in history experience betrayal as painful as Yusuf. His own brothers attempted to remove him permanently from their father's life. Because of them, he lost his childhood. He lost his family. He endured slavery and years of imprisonment. Yet when power finally rested in his hands, he chose mercy instead of revenge. There is no blame upon you today. These words transformed enemies into family once again. Forgiveness did not erase history. It healed the future. The story also teaches that chastity and moral integrity carry enormous value. Yusuf resisted temptation when every worldly factor encouraged him to surrender. He was young. He was unmarried. He was far from his family. He was pressured by a powerful woman. He faced imprisonment if he refused. Yet he preferred prison over sin. This remains one of the greatest examples of moral courage recorded in sacred history. Another lesson concerns leadership. When Yusuf accepted responsibility over Egypt's storehouses, he did not seek honor. He sought service. He understood that competence combined with honesty could save millions of lives. Islam never discourages qualified people from accepting leadership when they sincerely seek the public good. Authority becomes dangerous only when pursued for pride or personal gain. Yusuf also demonstrated that knowledge should always benefit society. Allah granted him wisdom. He used it to feed the hungry, protect the weak, preserve justice, and prevent economic collapse. Knowledge that serves only personal ambition remains incomplete. Knowledge that serves humanity becomes a blessing. The story further teaches the importance of family. Jealousy nearly destroyed Yaqub's household. Favoritism, misunderstood by the brothers, allowed Satan to exploit their emotions. Yet repentance, forgiveness, and Allah's mercy restored what hatred had broken. Families are not protected merely by blood relationships. They are protected through sincerity, humility, repentance, and forgiveness. Another lesson concerns repentance itself. The brothers spent years carrying hidden guilt. Eventually they admitted, "Indeed, we have been sinners." Allah opened the door for reconciliation because they finally accepted responsibility. True repentance begins when excuses end. The biography of Yusuf also teaches believers never to judge life by temporary circumstances. A child inside a well appeared abandoned. A slave appeared powerless. A prisoner appeared forgotten. In reality, Allah was preparing a prophet, a statesman, and the savior of an entire civilization. Many hardships that appear meaningless today may become the very events that prepare believers for tomorrow's blessings. Prophet Yusuf AS, in authentic hadith. The Prophet Muhammad spoke about Yusuf AS on several occasions. Among the most authentic narrations is the famous hadith recorded in both Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, in which the Messenger of Allah said, "The noble son of the noble son of the noble son of the noble was Yusuf, son of Yaqub, son of Ishaq, son of Ibrahim." This hadith highlights Yusuf's extraordinary prophetic lineage. His father was Prophet Yaqub. His grandfather was Prophet Ishaq. His great-grandfather was Prophet Ibrahim. Another authentic narration mentions that Yusuf was granted half of all human beauty. Classical scholars explain that this expression emphasizes his extraordinary physical beauty without suggesting mathematical precision. The Prophet Muhammad also encountered Yusuf during the miraculous night journey, Isra and Miraj. According to authentic narrations found in Sahih Muslim, Yusuf was among the prophets whom Muhammad met in the heavens. This meeting further confirms Yusuf's honored status among Allah's messengers. This concludes the main biography. The remaining scholarly discussion includes comparisons with the Tanakh and Bible, classical tafsir analysis, historical and archaeological context, and major misconceptions surrounding Prophet Yusuf AS. If this incredible journey through the life of Prophet Yusuf AS strengthened your faith, inspired your heart, or taught you something new, then don't forget to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you never miss our next historical documentary. Here on Sleepless Historian Salavora, we are dedicated to bringing you the most detailed, deeply researched, and captivating historical stories from the Quran, authentic hadith, classical tafsir, and reliable historical sources, presented in a cinematic storytelling style for audiences around the world. Share this documentary with your family and friends so that more people can discover the timeless lessons of patience, faith, forgiveness, and trust in Allah found in the extraordinary life of Prophet Yusuf AS. May Allah grant us hearts like Yusuf in times of temptation, patience like Yaqub in times of grief, sincere repentance like Yusuf's brothers, and unwavering trust in his perfect plan. May He forgive our sins, guide us to the straight path, and reunite us with the righteous in Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Thank you for watching Sleepless Historian Salavora. Until our next journey into history, may the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.